Happy Monday, degenerates. Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast right here on the home of Fight. You are on the home of Bets YouTube channel, and we are talking big pay-per-view energy. UFC 309. What is going on? It feels like UFC 300 was like 2 weeks ago. The last couple of months have absolutely flown by. We are at the end of the year. We've only got a couple more big fight cards left to talk about, and this is one of them. We got to get hyped. I couldn't be more excited to talk to you guys about this card. We've had a couple of dumpster divey type of events lately where we're just kind of limping in to the end of the year, but this is where the UFC gets it together. This is where the UFC goes, you know what? We saved a couple of these gems. We've got some of these stars that are just waiting to get into action. Now we finally get those cards. Last week, we finally got some violence. That was nice to see. The gloves, I guess they went back to the old gloves. No, I'm kidding. They didn't go back to the old gloves. But we actually got a couple of finishes on the UFC card last week out. So that was really awesome. We've got maybe not the top tier name talent that you want on this kind of a pay-per-view card. It's a little bit top heavy, but all the names underneath the top are gonna be good fights. And that's what matters to me. Last week's card was a blast. No names who want to knock each other out. Count me in. If you've got that on an undercard that then leads up to a good solid pay-per-view card, I'm in. That's my kind of a weekend. So hopefully you guys are as pumped up and as excited for this card as I am. I am very much looking forward to breaking down this entire card here with you guys. We are doing the dang thing. Welcome into the chat. What is going on, everybody? We got Addie Mason Jones. What's going on? Mushroom MMA, All in One Dream. We've got Joshua Snyder, the Grateful Dude. Ethan Hershey saying, let's make a fireball bet tonight. Ethan, it's funny. I actually was just thinking about you a couple of days ago, and you're right. It's been a minute. So maybe we find ourselves a bet on this card here. Buffo on the beat saying Clintus Duplessis. What's going on? Air Dog MMA in the house. We got Hap. We got Aaron. We got Meatball. Lucky Day MMA. How's everybody doing? Louis Mack Jr., welcome to the show. Also, I want to say very, very quickly, recap last week. It's laundry day. I lost the shirt. I don't know what's going on, but I cannot keep that damn blue Die Hard stimulus check t-shirt on for more than one event in a row. Absolutely buried. Okay, you guys know the story. I don't need to cry in my beer for you again. I'm getting destroyed in 2024, but thankfully the losses at least aren't like landslide minus 12 unit catastrophic anymore. It's like plus minus 2-3, which is a little bit more manageable and doesn't, hurt my pride quite as badly. My entire week last week came down to a finish in the Jillian Robertson fight. I made a two-legger parlay, and I was 1,000% certain that no matter who won that fight, it was not going to the judges' scorecards. And instead of elbowing Luana Pinheiro's head, Jillian Robertson decided to 12-6 her asshole. And you can survive that. You're not going to get TKO'd by getting a 12-6 elbow to the butt crack. So I'm very disappointed that Jillian didn't get the finish there for me. We end up taking the L on that fight card just because of that one fight. The other one, there were two underdogs I played last week, you guys, just two. And I said going in, I expect to go 1-1 on these underdogs. That was the whole game plan from the kit and caboodle here. Antonio Tricoli is garbage. Hot, fresh trash, okay? For a guy who's supposed to be a high-level jiu-jitsu guy, to stick his neck straight into an easy guillotine for a guy who's less than credentialed. I don't understand what the thought process was there. He was taller, he was longer, he would have been just fine at range. I want to see that fight play out because I feel like he got fluked in that spot a little bit. You have to respect the squeeze on Tresean Gore, but I still really want to run that fight back and see what the hell would have happened if Tricoli didn't decide to put his neck out there and just go ahead and get choked out for nothing. I hope the guy, much like Robelis to Spain, gets immediately cut from the promotion for that. I will say, I told you guys about the #1 angle in women's MMA today, and that is the Brazilian lesbians with neck tattoos. Comes through with flying colors. Denise Gomes went ahead and got the win. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And we did actually, believe it or not, hit the only underdog on the entire card. I went 10-1 on my picks, Tricoli being the only pick that I got wrong last week. So it should have been a better night betting because I did get Gaston Bolaños. This is your weekly reminder that I am your bantamweight king, baby. Gaston Bolaños comes through as a big underdog, and I should have doubled down, you guys. That was pre-fight. I was actually looking at that one and going, I jumped in way early. I got plus 165. I liked plus 165, and the line moved all the way to plus 200. Why didn't I take a taste? Why didn't I throw one more unit on it, plus 200? I thought about it, but I'm too chicken shit right now because of the L's that I've been taking left and right, including the over 1.5 in the main event, because my boy Neil Magny is just crispy, burnt toast at this point in his career. That poor guy. I could do an entire recap show and take 2 hours for you guys, but it's UFC 309 and we ain't got time. On top of that, it is Veterans Day. So I want to give a shout out and a massive thank you. You know, obviously I live in Arizona. I'm in the States. I know a lot of you people who watch and listen, you're not necessarily in the United States, but it's Veterans Day here for us. We like to salute the troops and say thank you so much for providing the freedoms that we get to enjoy. These people go out and they fight for us and they die for us. And that's what it means to live in the United States. And that's just something that can't be understated, the amount that we owe these people. And with that in mind, I want to bring on our guest today, a veteran himself, a man that I look up to and respect. And we couldn't be happier to have back on the podcast for this week's episode, none other than John Kelly, DFS. My man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Happy to talk fights with you, chop it up. Nice pay-per-view offering. We know anytime my guy Michael Chandler's on the card, it's not going to be a boring fight. So super excited for that. Thank you for the warm welcome and shout out to all my fellow veterans out there on today's wonderful day.
Absolutely, my guy. Absolutely. And welcome in everybody else who's rolling in through the chat. We've already got over 300 live viewers on today's show. So guys, do me a favor. If you haven't already, smash the like button, get us some hype going, share the show out, please, if you don't mind. I'm going to repeat. We've got a goal going into the year, you guys. Not last year. We've got a couple of months until just the end of 2024. And we have got 9.1K subscribers on this YouTube channel. You guys, we want 10K by the end of 2024. So please, if you like the show, if you're tuning in for the content, if it's your first time here, subscribe. This is one of the best MMA channels on YouTube today, especially when you're looking through a betting lens. We do a lot of great content. So please help us get to that 10K goal. Subscribe if you haven't already. And then, John, thank you for the time. Thank you for being here. It's always awesome to chop it up. And frankly, it's been too long since we had you on the podcast. So I appreciate you making the room for us here. I told everybody about my rough weekend. How'd you do last weekend on the fights?
I had a rough weekend as well. I honestly did not have that many bets. It was a small card for me. I didn't really like many spots. I had Jillian Robertson round 2 and round 3. Felt like we should have got to the window there. Obviously didn't happen. And I bet Semmelsberger, which was bad. I mean, it seems like his durability is shot at this point. And then I think I had one other bet. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but it didn't hit. So it was small week for me in terms of betting, but pretty brutal run out either way. So happy to turn it around for the pay-per-view this week.
Yep, you and me both, man. Last week, I wanted to do just a Gomes and Jillian parlay, and looked at the numbers, and you'd have to lay minus 200 to get there. So I was like, man, I'm going to go under instead. We'll do violence instead of Jillian's money line, and that kind of cheeky little play is what burned me. So I'm with you there on the pain of that fight not ending in those late rounds. And frankly, you got to give a little bit of credit to Luana. She had much better gas than I expected her to, defending all those takedowns. I kind of thought she'd fold up shop as that fight got a little bit tougher, and she hung in there. So yeah, man, a rough outcome on that one.
Yeah. I was also impressed with her scrambling, like in round 3, even. Like, that was actually pretty surprising for me. But that's probably on Jillian to push more of a pace early. But is what it is. There'll be more spots, and I'm sure we'll talk about them this week too.
Yes, sir. I believe there are some spots this evening that we will be taking a look at. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get straight on into this card. We got a lot to talk about tonight, baby. First fight of the night, we got Veronica Hardy taking on Eduardo Ronda Moura. And the last time I broke down an Eduardo Moura fight, John, I raged about the amount of women these days that have the Ronda nickname. It just bothers me. It's like, because you know, you go back a couple of years and every other fighter was named Pitbull. I understand what Ronda's done for the MMA community. I understand that all these women looked up to her and that's how they got into the game, but we need a limit. We need a limit on the amount of people that can have Ronda as a fighting nickname in MMA. Regardless, she is taking on my girl, Veronica Hardy. That is Mrs. Dan Hardy to the rest of you out there. And I've said that the best betting angle in women's MMA is Brazilian lesbians with neck tattoos, John. But the real best betting angle in women's MMA for the last couple of years has just been Veronica Hardy money line, baby. I had a guy in my chat last week call me out because I used the term, my guy, my girl. And he's like, bro, anytime you say that, those are just like the bottom level ass worst fighters we've ever seen. And I got to tell you, I can't really dispute that too much. And I think it's because I've got love for the underdog, right? Like, I'm always looking for somebody who's a little underrated, somebody who's got a higher ceiling than people give them credit for. And the reason I feel like I keep digging for those types of hidden gems is exactly Veronica Hardy. Like, I hit a plus 330 money line with her just 2-3 fights ago because nobody realized how good she actually was. Now she comes into this fight and she is, instead of being a dog, favored. They're finally showing her a little bit of respect, and it took people a while to learn that she's actually a very solid, very well-rounded fighter. She's on a 3-fight win streak, and it really feels like it's UFC versus the Hardys, man. They're trying to use her as a stepping stone. They keep giving her very tough opponents, very bad matchups, and it takes her athleticism and the brain of Dan Hardy to overcome that issue so that she can finally get her hand raised in some of these fights. And so far it's worked, but they're just going to keep throwing her to the wolves, man. Using our sponsor, Bet Openly, you guys, Veronica Hardy right now is a minus 135 favorite. You've got plus 135, the underdog Eduardo Moura on the other side. And if you remember, Veronica Hardy, she kind of reminds me of like a Frankie Edgar. She probably should be fighting at 115 pounds, but she stays at 125 instead to have no weight cut, to have a speed advantage, to be explosive, to eat. You know what I mean? She's a little undersized, but she really knows how to use that to her advantage. Very good wrestling, keeps an excellent pace, excellent BJJ. She's dang near impossible to submit. She's very solid with her defense, and boy, is she fast. Eduardo Moura, 10-1, 30 years old. She is coming off Dana White's Contender Series. She's 1-1 so far in the UFC. When she made her debut, the UFC did the old softball approach. They gave her Montserrat Ruiz, the little bunny ears girl that everybody remembers, who just never should have even had a spot in the UFC. I'm sorry. And so she naturally rolled straight through her, but it wasn't without issue, John. And that was kind of my big thing, is red flags all over that fight. Eduardo Moura blast double legging someone like Montserrat Ruiz, and her being able to get shucked off and get back to her feet. That just screams problem to me, because she shouldn't be doing that to anybody at the UFC level. In Moura's second fight, she fought my girl Diniz Gomes that we saw last week, that we cashed a first leg of a parlay on, and that fight went to a split. It was a much better performance, and the thing that really jumped out to me was the size discrepancy. Moura's massive. She missed weight for that fight, And for this fight, she is moving up to 125 pounds. So I kind of expect a fuller version of her. I expect her to not be sucked out, and I expect her to have more gas in the tank than we've seen in the past, because she'll be fighting at what should be probably her correct weight class. And this girl's a size bully. Man, she will blast double you like a linebacker and just keep on trucking her way to the fence, pumping the legs until you finally lose balance and fall over. She grabs your back. She rides the body lock. She likes to try to climb you like a tree, make you carry her weight. And I led this whole thing off with the best angle in women's MMA. This underrated gem has been Veronica Hardy, and she's my girl, and I've gone to war with her. And when you're on a heater, Jon, you don't get off the train. Like, that's rule number one in gambling. You never leave the table when you're on a heater. I really want to bet Eduarda Moura in this fight. I hate to say that. Like, Veronica Hardy is my girl. I make an argument for her every single time I break her fights down. I am always team Veronica Hardy. I think Moura might just be too big for her. I know Hardy's going to have a lot of other skills. I know she's going to have the speed advantage. I like her hands. But if Moura gets her hands on her, I just don't know if Hardy's going to be able to keep this chick off her at 125 pounds. I could very much see an Eduarda Moura decision here in this spot, and I don't want to be laying a price like minus 150 or higher, which is the prevailing number at most books if you're not using Bet Openly. That's getting pricey for my girl who's a little undersized. Talk to me, Jon. How do you feel about this first fight of the night, and what are you doing here?
Yeah, I wasn't ready for you to say you were tempted to bet Moura there. I thought for sure you'd be going back to your girl Hardy. I know she's been a cash cow for you, but I think your thought process is right. To be honest, I see value on the underdog as well for a couple reasons. You mentioned a few of them. I'm not really concerned with the move up in weight class. I think it's to be expected with how big she was, but I also think you look in terms of like looking at it from a market perspective, you look up and down Hardy's career, you are now buying her at the absolute peak. She has never been this big of a favorite over any matchup in the UFC. She also is the type of fighter that you like to back as an underdog. You don't want to be laying chalk on her style because she's not high volume on the feet. You mentioned, like, yes, she's going to be a little bit active. She starts fast, but she's not a very good boxer. Her defense is not good, and her volume drops off, especially outside of the first round, because her gas tank is not very good either. So you mentioned these things where it's like really the only concern with Moura is the gas tank, which we can expect to be a little bit more improved, not having to cut the extra 10 pounds. And it's not like Hardy is like this pace warrior that is really going to like make her pay if she gets tired. I think Hardy can be taken down. I think she could be controlled. I think Moura is the side here. The only real concern is, yes, Moura is still probably going to get tired. And Hardy is very slick with her jiu-jitsu, like you mentioned. So I think like maybe catching Moura in an arm bar, catching her in some sort of scramble if she gets sloppy and tired on a takedown. Like, I think those outcomes are live. But in terms of laying chalk on a fighter like Hardy that just doesn't have a great round winning skill set to put a stamp on these rounds against somebody that's going to be a better grappler than her, I think is pretty bad process. So I like the underdog here. I'm not saying it's like a slam dunk. I do think there's better underdogs on this card, but I do think there's enough value for me to at least place a 1 unit bet on the underdog. I like Moura. I hope she gets her hand raised on Saturday.
Well, I like Veronica, and I hope she gets her hand raised. But from a betting perspective, I got to agree with you, man. I think it's dog or pass in this spot, and it's really hard when you've got your cash cow and you got to kind of kill your babies, as they say, and you got to go against the person that made it to the dance with you. It's really, really tough. Now, you guys know there's been a lot of different factors this year. Jon, you and I were talking backstage before the show a little bit about some of this. Between the judging in MMA today and the year of 2024 being, the year of our Lord Chalk, it's been really hard to argue for underdogs. And I feel like there's a lot of lines on this card that are damn near trappy when it comes to the way that they are set up. And I always get really nervous when people online, the general public, when they pat me on the back for making a pick and they all agree with me. It's like, man, if we're laying minus 135 and we're all laying minus 135, it's like there's a problem there. Like the bookies are not giving you a deal. You're missing something. And I'm seeing more love and support for Veronica Hardy in this spot than I've ever seen before. And that just to my core makes me nervous that she can't be the right side if everybody has finally woken up to Veronica Hardy when she's basically at her peak when it comes to how much they are pricing her. So I'm a little bit nervous. Do you have any thoughts or anything you want to say just for the people, generally speaking, as far as the underdog stuff or like the judges' decisions? I know, like I said, I know we chatted about it behind backstage. I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, no, I do have a trend using the betting trends tool at fightnumbers.com. Since September 1st, favorites are actually 80 and 26, which is kind of crazy. It's over 75% of fights. And if you blind bet, if you blind betted every betted, I don't know. If you blind bet the favorite in every matchup since September 1st, you would have returned just under 8% ROI, which is kind of absurd. In terms of like speaking to you saying like the chalk's been rolling, it certainly has over the course of the year. It's up only about 2% since last year. But if you take the smaller sample of the last couple of months, it's actually pretty drastic. So hopefully we can get a couple more underdogs through on this card and then through the rest of the year to kind of get some of that little bit of run good to end the year here.
For sure, man. For sure. Hey, last year I called 2023 the year of the dog because 2022 was historically chalky as well. And I like to think of betting as like a roulette table. You've got the same odds every time you spin that damn ball, right? Like it's never, if it's red, you've got the exact same option for red and black on that next spin. It doesn't guarantee that black is going to come. But when you zoom out and you've got 100 outcomes, eventually those numbers are going to even out. So we'll go on a run where dogs are jumping here in the very near future that'll balance these books out. Whether it's this week or in the next couple of weeks, I don't know. We just got to stay on our toes, guys. Don't overcorrect. If you haven't been parlaying up all the favorites until this point, you may have missed the train. Don't start parlaying them all now because you don't want to be the one left out there in the cold holding the bag. Real quick in the chat, my guy Buffo on the beat says, Clint, if you had to choose between Jillian or Veronica to be your girl forever, who would it be? Well, Buffo, I got to tell you, man, I am nothing if not loyal. Jillian was my girl first, and she has the redhead equity. So I'm going to go ahead and say Jillian will be the girl forever. That's a tough choice, though. You're killing me with these types of throat cutting questions here, man. You got to ease off on me a little bit. All right, guys. Next fight up, we got Oban Elliott, the Welsh gangster, and he takes on Bassil Hafez. And you know what, John? I like Bassil. I like Bassil a lot. This guy, he's the Thing from comic books. If you guys know anything about, the Fantastic Four, he's the giant rock monster, right? He's just impenetrable. He's made out of rock, and you can't hurt him. He's 9-4-1, 1-1 in the UFC so far. He got brought into the organization on short notice to fight Jack Della and had a really weird fight where I kind of feel like Jack Della looked past him a little bit. He lost that fight by split. It was very close. He bounced back with a win over McGhee Gall, somebody we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the show. And the real thing about Bassil Hafez is that he just relies on that giant neck of his. Like, it's impossible to hurt this guy. It's impossible to finish this guy. So he's a decent wrestler. He's got good jiu-jitsu. His striking is nothing to write home about, but he's got power. He's one of these meathead bite down and swing type of guys, and he just keeps coming forward. So if you've got that kind of physicality and that kind of durability and you can't get the guy off you, he's going to cause you a problem. Now, against more finessed fighters, he's got a ceiling. He's not going to beat a certain caliber of competition, but he does like to push the grappling. 3 takedowns per 15 minutes in his UFC fights with a 24% accuracy. He actually has landed 3 takedowns in both of his UFC fights to this point, but he's taken on Oban Elliott, 11-2. The Welsh gangster, and I've got a typo here in my notes. Somehow it corrected me to the wrong gangster. Just wanted to share that little behind the scenes peek there with you guys. 7-fight win streak for Oban Elliott, 3-0 run in the UFC off Dana White's Contender Series. John, Oban reminds me of a better version of Jack Shore. Like he's in the right weight class. He's got the right physique. He's got the right build. His game plan is just to get his hands on you. He's got a nice jab. He's got fast hands. He gets you thinking about the striking, and then he closes the distance immediately. He grabs onto you. He's got good head movement. He's solid defensively, strong underhooks, likes to grind you up against that cage. And then he's just always looking to make you carry his weight, always trying to drag you to the ground, looking for front chokes. He's always making you think, always attacking with submission opportunities. And even if he does ever lose in a scramble, like fall to his back, we've seen him snatch arm bars. He's got really fast hips. This kid's got a 72% takedown defense. And frankly, John, until I see otherwise, if it's a grapple heavy approach, or if he's fighting another person who's got a grapple heavy style, I kind of think Oban Elliott's just the better wrestler in this situation. I'm going to rely on that takedown defense. I'm going to rely on those strong hips and say he's the more fluid striker, the faster human being, and has the edge both grappling and striking in this particular matchup. There's not a lot of favorites I love on this card. As you guys well know, I am a dog hunter, but at minus 240, I kind of feel like Oban Elliott's the side. What do you like on this one?
I think he's a better live option than pre-flop for a couple reasons. For starters, I don't know if I agree he's the better wrestler. Now, what he's very good at is working back to his feet and not allowing people to control him. So to your point, I think this matchup, that part of it is actually works out really good in his favor, because Hafez, we know, is like all gas, no brakes. So even if Hafez lands a takedown or two, like I said, Oban's really difficult to control. You know he's going to work back to his feet. He had pretty much his entire career when guys try to grapple him. And that's just going to wear on the gas tank of somebody like Hafez. Hafez is also somebody that like wants that knockout. Like he went balls to the wall against Gall. Just everything he threw was a big wind up. And it's because he was hunting that knockout. He even admitted it after that fight, how badly he wanted the knockout, said he's going to get it the next time out. So I don't really expect much to change about the game plan of Hafez. I think he is going to look for takedowns. I think he probably gets one or two, but I struggle to see him be able to control Oban Elliott. But I do think he could at least have some big moments early. We know Elliott has been hurt before. He's been dropped, but he's very resilient. Like even though he gets hurt, like he's a dog, man. And that's why I like the live angle more than pre-flop, especially at a moderate size favorite. And because I do think he might get taken down, could get hurt. One angle that I do like to take, and I don't know if I'm going to do it with this fight in particular, but when I have somebody that is plus money who I do favor early in the fight, sometimes I'll just bet them and then look to get out or flip positions to the other side once I get a much better number. Like this could be potentially a spot to do that. Maybe not like super clear, but if Hafez does have some grappling success, or maybe he just rocks Oban early but doesn't finish him, well then I'm gonna look to get involved on the Oban side. But yeah, I kind of just see it going that way, is like Hafez probably has a little bit of success early, and I think his success is front loaded and he eventually fades and Elliott takes over. So that's kind of how I see the fight playing out. Different expectation of the fight, but same result. I think Oban wins.
Yeah, I'm looking Oban Elliott by decision is kind of the way I'm thinking this thing plays out.
Yep. Same.
I think we rely on Bassil Hafez's durability here, and then the ability of Oban Elliott to do a better job of winning minutes over 2 of the 3 rounds. Like I mentioned, Oban Elliott is a minus 240-ish, 250 favorite in most places, you guys. Check that openly, minus 216. So if you're looking for a better way to play that, if you don't have access to props, that's a good way to go. I wonder what that number will look like. I don't have anything at the moment. I would assume that Oban Elliott by decision is probably somewhere in the ballpark of even money. I doubt they're going to give you any kind of a deal on that kind of a situation here. But I think the way things are going these days, this fight is one of the ones on the card that I feel like negates everything I said to start the show, John. This is your chalk spot. This is your decision spot. Like this is the one where I'm just going to keep on marching in line and salute and say thank you for the fair price tag and thank you for the decision, sir.
There you go.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on. First, real quick, I want to shout out my guy, UFC, free UFC bet picks in the chat. He's been a guest on the show several times. Very knowledgeable, very solid better, good track record. So when he puts stuff in the chat, like one of those write-ups that he charges people for, you guys, take a look. That's very valuable information that people usually have to pay for. So make sure you take a look at that.
Wait, you said he charges people. His name is Free UFC Bet Pick. I mean, you might have to rebrand that, my guy. Come on now.
That has never gone noticed by me. That is hysterical. But yeah, no,
I'm just messing.
No, he would see the humor in it too. That's good stuff. I like that. All right, guys. Next up, you've got McGhee Gall, and he's taking on Ramiz Brahimaj. Oh, we talked about McGhee Gall a little bit just a minute ago. This guy's fallen on tough times, John. McGhee Gall is like the UFC's version of a first-round rookie QB draft pick. Like, the guy got discovered by Dana White on looking for a fight. He was the first episode, calls out CM Punk. He's basically grown up in front of us. He's been in the UFC ever since, but they just keep giving him shots. You know, that washed up rookie QB, but he's got that first-round draft pick capital that gets shipped around to 4 different teams, and they all try to roll him out there. Trey Lance, still getting stuck behind Cooper Rush on the Cowboys this past weekend. Like, that's who McGhee Gall is. He's on a 3-fight skid right now, unfortunately, the poor guy. He's 2-4 in his last 6. He's barely hanging on to a roster spot, but here we go again. UFC's rolling him right back out there because he's got a good story, and at this point, he's kind of built a name for himself, even though he is on the losing side a lot of these fights. He's rounded out his game a decent amount. You know, when we first ran into him, he was basically just a BJJ guy. And unless I'm mistaken, when he first got signed, he was like a purple belt. It's not like they were even getting this young stud black belt or something like that to bring into the UFC. He was a purple belt who kind of knew how to strike and could ground and pound a little bit and really relied on that to get his wins. They wanted CM Punk to get a win in the UFC, and they gave him McGhee Gall for that opportunity. And Mickey ended up just being a little bit too much for him to handle at that point. So that's what we're dealing with here. Now, over the last couple of years, he's rounded out his striking. He does have this like sneaky power now, which is a little bit surprising. He kind of clubs people on the feet a little bit, but he still doesn't have a plan B. I can't count on McGhee Gall to win minutes. He's a finisher. He's a guy that has these big flashy moments. And when he sparks you on the feet, he'll grab your neck and he'll tap you out. But if he doesn't find that choke, if you manage to squirm out of it, he can't find that punch again. He can't keep finding those moments of victory. I think he's got 1 decision win in his UFC run so far, and it's against Salem Tuhari. I mean, a guy, you know, someone nobody knows anymore is the only guy he was able to beat over 15 minutes. He just doesn't win decisions. So he's going up against the guy in Ramiz Brahimaj, who's 10-5, 31 years old. He was training out of Fortis MMA, I think, until just recently. He also has had a bit of a tough run in the UFC. This kid was like an all-star grappler, someone with a massive amount of hype around him when he first made it to the UFC. He's essentially a busted prospect. And I remember when he got ear TKO'd by Max Griffin. I mean, just took an absolute beating on the feet. And it wasn't until Max literally elbowed the kid's ear off that they finally were like, okay, enough's enough. Like, let's get him out of there. Since then, he's been 1-1, alternating wins and losses in the UFC, but also he's extremely finish reliant himself, John. This kid has never won, if not for way of submission. He's got 10 wins. All 10 are by sub. He's either bullying you on the mat and draining that cardio and finding his way to a choke, or he's not winning the fight. Whether it's that 1 KO loss that he's got on his record, or otherwise it's basically just been decisions, because he also is not the best minute winner in the world. But when you throw these two in the blender, I have a hard time finding a path to victory for McGhee Gall, because these two guys are relatively equal striking, I feel like. McGhee maybe has that weird, awkward power like I talked about, but it's not something he can really write home about and rely on. And Ramiz is not a guy that you can finish. He's another one of these made out of stones type of fighters. It took someone slicing his ear off Van Gogh style for them to stop the fight. He wasn't going anywhere. I don't think Mickey's got the power to knock this guy out. And then anytime you get a grappling matchup, for me, I'm biased to the wrestlers. Unless you're just all-star level jiu-jitsu, Jiu-jitsu guys will play from their back. They'll look for arm bars. They'll look for triangles. Wrestlers will get on top and they'll look for ground and pound. They'll win minutes. So unless I think the jiu-jitsu guy is so much better that he'll actually find a reversal or a sweep or a sub, I'm going to back the wrestler. I cannot believe on this card, it is the second time that I'm going to go against what is normally my basic instinct. Veronica already is someone I go to war with day in and day out every single time. Ramiz is a fighter who I've labeled as straight up a fade, somebody I want never to have money on. Every time I've had the opportunity so far in his UFC run, I bet against the guy. It's dog or pass. John, I think Ramiz Brahimaj is the side here, and I don't know how Mickey Gall is any form of chalk in the UFC at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you said that, because I felt like last time I was on here, we just agreed on every single pick, and I'm on the other side, man. I like Mickey Gall here, so let's have a little bit of a debate, because I actually think this is a pretty solid spot for Mickey Gall. A lot of what you said I agree with. Like, obviously, he's not the prototype of someone you want to lay chalk on, and I don't even know what it was a pick 'em. I don't know. Did it move?
Minus 125 on Mickey now. So
okay,
yeah,
so a little
very,
bit of
very
movement.
slight chalk.
Sorry, my dog is yelping.
Dog's barking.
Hey, buddy. Hey,
your dog is agreeing with me.
Yeah, he does that when he's dreaming. He barks in his sleep. But yeah, I actually think from what you were saying about Mickey's early career, like, it certainly wasn't good. He had a long way to develop, but I think he has put in some work. Like, we've seen, even in as recent as his last fight, I thought his striking looked a lot better against Bassil Hafez. Not only did he hurt him a few times, he was the one putting more volume out there. And you look at a guy like Brahimaj on the feet, the dude doesn't throw. Like, he literally doesn't throw. Like, all of his fights, like, he doesn't throw strikes. It's very concerning. So then you have to bank on him having that grappling success. And you look at his career, and you mentioned it. This guy is just early sub or bust. And most of those early submissions came against guys that just literally can't grapple. And I don't think Mickey Gall fits that bill. I also think Mickey Gall is just as live to land takedowns here. I do think Brahimaj is probably more likely to early if he goes to it. But that's the other thing, is I don't trust his fight IQ. You mentioned the Max Griffin fight. Like, did he even shoot a takedown in that fight? I remember just screaming at my TV because I bet him by first round sub, and he just stood there. Like, he wasn't striking, didn't try to grapple. Like, I don't trust this guy at all. And this is somebody that I was like, not like super hyped on, but like, I kind of bought into like the grappling angle. And like, now I am just totally off. I have seen enough improvements from Mickey Gall. Plus, he, Northeast guy, he's going to have the crowd hopefully behind him. I think someone said Brahimaj is from New York. I didn't know that. I know he was training in Texas. So maybe both guys will have a little bit of the crowd pop, but I know Mickey's very popular in the Northeast. But yeah, I like Mickey Gall. I think he's going to be the more active of the two. I think he's probably got the better grappling, but that part I'm not as confident. But in terms of the activity and the work rate, I think it's for sure going to be Mickey Gall. And the last thing, I think the gas tank is going to favor him, because Brahimaj, we know he's shown, especially if you could take him down, he's got nothing off his back and he just kind of quits. Whereas Mickey, you look at the Hafez fight where he was losing that entire fight basically, and he's still coming in that third round. And if that's the case, if this is a close fight, give me the guy that I think I can count on to be there to fight for 15 minutes. And I think that's my guy, Mickey Gall. So we'll be on opposite sides of that one, but we'll see. Maybe we'll have to do like an unofficial, friendly wager between us two for that one.
I like it, John. I like it. Name the, what the hell is going on with my settings here? Name, you name it, man. If you want to do a drink bet, a shoey type situation, or whatever you want to do, put it on the line. We can go head to head here on this.
All right, we'll think of something good. We'll think of something good.
Chat, if you've got ideas and options on what our bet should be, go ahead and throw them in the chat here. We'll take them under consideration. And John, just to bring this whole thing back around, one final thing on this one that really is tipping me over the edge here on this one, as I have said that the absolute best base for MMA is training with the GOAT, Belal Muhammad. And that is where Ramiz Brahimaj has the advantage coming into this fight. He's doing this fight camp with none other than Belal. Now, I know Belal is sidelined right now, with that bone infection that he's dealing with, but he actually is a very good coach. He's very strong when it comes to his preparation. We've seen the game plan be exceptional from Belal. And frankly, I think if, in anime, you always see someone run off and find like a master, right? Like somebody who can help them get to that next level. If you were going to pick a current UFC fighter at the top of the food chain that could help Ramiz get to where he wants to be, Belal's the pick, man. That's the master. That's the guy who has the same attributes that you do where you want to be. I think that's a perfect selection for him to go train with and train under. And if Belal takes this guy under his wing, I think we'll see a lot of improvements. The wrestling, the IQ, the boxing, the cardio, all of it. So I'm kind of expecting Ramiz Brahimaj 2.0 coming into Saturday. And I know that's a little bit of that leap of faith that we sometimes have to do. This isn't hockey where the team has a letdown spot and they're playing 2 days from now and you're going to get 100% on the team after a letdown. These guys only fight 2, maybe 3 times a year. So it's not the same thing. You've got to be able to just kind of have faith that somebody's improved in an area without actually seeing it. And that's a little bit of what I'm doing here with Ramiz.
I respect it.
All right. Well, we will see, man. That's fun. And you're right. The last time you came on, we absolutely, oh geez, Ethan, you got to come on the next podcast naked. We'll get pulled off YouTube so fast, my guy. So no one wants to see that. No. Yeah, the last time you came on, we did a lot of agreeing. So it is nice to be able to kind of debate a fight back and forth just a little bit. I'm sure we'll have a couple more spots like that on this card with how many close competitive lines we've got throughout the night. All right, everybody. Next one up. We've got Marcin Tybura, and he's taking on Jhonata Diniz. We talked about Diniz a couple of weeks ago. This is very, very fresh in our minds. We got to wish well on the Black Beast. I guess he had like a family emergency. It wasn't like a medical situation or something I heard. It was like a family situation. So hoping that everything is good there with Derek Lewis, the legend, the Black Beast. Frankly, I'm kind of happy that fight didn't happen because I didn't want to see Diniz knock him out, and I thought that might be kind of the way that fight would go. So dodged a bit of a bullet there. So we know all about Jhonata Diniz, the UFC's shiny new toy. He's got the angle of having the kickboxing win over Alex Pereira, big Brazilian monster, undefeated heavyweight, whispering in Carl Williams' ear not to grapple with him, all that stuff. We talked about all of that last time. So we know all about Jhonata Diniz, but he's got a new opponent here in Marcin Tybura, 25-9, 39 years old. As we know, heavyweights, they kind of carry a little bit later. They can hit their primes a little bit later and stick around longer than other weight classes do. So even at 39, it is what it is. He's a little older, but he's okay. He's coming off of the most embarrassing and disappointing loss I think I've ever seen in the UFC, besides Antonio Tricoli last week. He did basically the same thing, John. He stuck his arm in an arm bar for Sergey Spivak. I feel so bad for anybody who had the money line on Marcin Tybura that night because he was a slight underdog and round one played out exactly the way that you wanted it to. Sergey Spivak immediately got uncomfortable, immediately ended up on his back and looked like a turtle down there. It was going to be one-way traffic for Marcin Tybura to run away with that fight. And then he gives him his arm. How many heavyweights hit armbar from guard? Like, that's a women's MMA 115-pound type of thing. You don't see that at 265. And you could just see the look on the face of Marcin Tybura after that happened. He was like, I cannot believe I just got armbarred on not national television, worldwide television, pay-per-view. Like, embarrassing. Absolutely. So that's going to be a bad taste in his mouth that he's coming back to kind of rinse out here. Tybura has always been a bit of a thorn in my side because I marked him as a fade after he went on that run of getting knocked out a bunch. Back in 2018, 2019, like, this is a guy that I simply didn't believe in. Shamil Abdurakhimov knocking him flat, Augusto Sakai KOing him in round one. I watched those performances and was like, oh, we're just gonna print money betting against Marcin Tybura every time he steps in the cage. I didn't realize that he kind of got his shit together after that, though, John. He kind of redoubled down on his career. He took it seriously. He started training harder, etc., all that good stuff. And he got a nice little step down in competition. He went on a hair. So I've lost some money trying to fade Marcin Tybura, and then got a little bit of it back because I've come around to his, new and improved skill set in his last little bit of a run here. The only guy to knock him out since that bad run back in 2019 or so was Tom Aspinall. I'm not going to hold that too badly against you. I don't think Marcin is chinny the way he was back in the day. I think it more have been like a lack of preparation and a quit type of thing, more so than being chinny, and then also getting hit in the face by the biggest men on the planet. But here we have a spot where that might be a problem because he is coming up against Jhonata Diniz. It's a struggle for me here, John, because I feel like whoever lands first wins here. If Marcin lands a takedown, we've seen Jhonata Diniz doesn't really have what it takes on the ground. And then on the feet, Marcin has been had by guys that fit this profile, this big, athletic, fast power striker type of guy. I think this line is very appropriately pick 'em because we could see Marcin sit on this guy's chest for 15 minutes. And when he gets tired, maybe even tap him with like a, the best fat man chokes. My favorite was the arm triangle because you just get on top of them, lock them down. They can't go anywhere. And then you kind of boa constrictor your way up their body and tap them out with their own shoulder. Marcin Tybura loves doing that shit. I could see him doing that here to the Jhonata Diniz. But if he can't get him down early, if he can't wear him down or survive the first 6 or so minutes of this fight, I kind of still think Jhonata is fully capable of clipping this guy and putting him out. It's a coin flip. I will lean ever so slightly towards Tybura here, John, and that worries me. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's I pretty much see it the same as you. I was semi-interested. I think Tybura was a little slight plus money earlier in the week, maybe yesterday or the day before. And I was pretty tempted there on a small Tybura bet, but where it's at now, I mean, I think he's like minus 125 right now, the last time I checked. So now it seems like the line kind of flipped, and now I think it's just an easy stay away. I think this is another one where Tybura live is probably better than pre-flop. I mean, he does need to land that takedown early, but he also needs to avoid getting clipped, like you mentioned, to where, maybe if you wait 2 minutes and kind of see what it looks like, you avoid a knockout loss and potentially still have time before the line blows out if Tybura hasn't landed a takedown yet or something like that. But yeah, I think it's one in terms of pre-flop I'm not going to get involved in. I see it the same as you though. I think if Tybura can grapple him, then he's going to look pretty good. He knows the assignment. He's fought guys very similar to Diniz in the past, these powerful KO strikers who have basically no grappling. So it literally just comes down to whether or not he's going to be able to close distance without getting KO'd. I think he probably could, but again, I'm not putting a ton of faith into that because I'm probably not backing him this week.
Yeah, no, I hear you there, man. Lucky Day MMA says maybe the UFC talks to Tybura about wrestling just like they did Williams. And you know what? The thing is, there's a difference here. Williams is a guy that was kind of building his name, trying to gain favor with the organization, blah, blah, blah. Tybura's been around the block forever. He's 39 years old. He's got his head caved in several times. He don't give a shit. That guy's not listening to anybody. If they're like, hey, why don't you go kickbox with Jhonata Diniz? He ain't taking that. Tybura's going to be like, no, we wrestle. We wrestle. So I think we can trust him to at least try to fight to the optimal game plan. Whether or not he can is the question. And I'm kind of there with you, John. I think this is a live bet entry type of spot. I will say Tybura, but I am not putting my money on this fight, at least not pre-flop, because I don't want to get caught with my pants down when Jhonata lands just a big right hand while Marcin mistimes a takedown or a trip or something like that and ends up KOing him flat. That would be bad.
Yep.
All right, moving right along, you guys. We got another legend here, Jim A10 Miller, and he takes on Damon Jackson. Both these legends, John, have had a bit of a rough time here in the UFC. They've both fallen on tough times. I would say, winner of this fight gets a new hip. That's the type of fight we're dealing with here. Jim Miller has so many fights, 37, 18, and 0 at 41 years old. I always said the magic age is 40. When fighters get to 40 years old, I start looking for opportunities to bet against them rather than bet on them. And Jim is well past that expiration date, but he's coming back and he's doing the dang thing again, trying to make it all the way to UFC 400. Godspeed there, Jim Miller. He really is a guy that has benefited from the UFC giving him a break. I kind of talked about this with Carolina last week, where when you've got someone who's, legend status, somebody who's done the dang thing, been around the block, you owe them a couple, they give you a hard reset. They let you fight people that are a little bit lower level, and they thrive. These guys that have got that back class, that experience, that next step, maybe they were contenders at one point or champions at one point in their career. They're just gonna be able to beat some of these young up and comers, some of the mid to low tier fighters. They're not gonna have a problem with them because they're just that much better everywhere. Well, then when you put them back in like the fringe contender circle, people who've still got it a little bit, that's when they start to struggle. Jim Miller earlier this year got beaten within an inch of his life by Bobby Green. That one, frankly, was hard to watch. I mean, it was a struggle for me, John, because I thought Jim might be able to pull the old round one Miller move and club Bobby, because we've seen a little bit of fragility with Bobby Green. He was also coming off of a bad knockout situation. So, I thought maybe Jim could win early, but it became real clear that after he didn't get him out of there early, that he just was going to get paced and picked apart. And in round 3, Bobby could have taken Jim Miller out at any point in time he wanted to. Frankly, the ref probably should have stepped in. That's the kind of fight where I think Miller might have lost a couple years. You know what I mean? It was a rough scene to watch him go through that. Damon Jackson, 23-7-1, 36 years old, training out of Fortis MMA. There's a couple guys from Fortis here on this card, or former Fortis guys on the card. He's also had a bit of a rough run here, 1-3 in his last 4. But if you zoom out a little bit, he is 3-3 in his last 6. So it's just been a little bit of a tough run here recently. He also seems to fall to these guys who are fringe-ish contenders. He managed to get that split decision win over a guy like Alexander Hernandez, but he's getting sparked by a guy like Dan Ige. And, speaking of which, Twitter favorite Mbaye, I do have to apologize publicly, because I did say that I felt like Lerone Murphy was more explosive and hit harder than Dan Ige. And I'll just tell you guys how wrong I was after watching the two of them fight when I said that. So I got to give a little bit of props and apologize. Dan Ige still hits like a ton of bricks. So I think this fight kind of shapes up a little bit like the last one to me, John, where I think Jim Miller is probably live in round 1. I don't trust Damon Jackson. I talked about how he's not as durable as he used to be. I do think he's low-key chinny. He's been knocked out many times in his career. Most of them are on the early side. But I also have been caught before believing that a veteran, or not even a veteran, but somebody comes off of a rough night at the office, they take a beating, and I expect them to be the same guy I've seen on tape for the last couple, and they just aren't anymore. Chito Vera was the one that comes to mind immediately, where I bet on him in his last fight, because it's Chito, man. He's going to buy it down on the mouthpiece and move forward and keep throwing. But after that fight where he took an absolute beating from Sean O'Malley, he just didn't look like the same guy. I'm worried Jim Miller's not going to look like the same guy coming in here. I'm worried Jim Miller's finally going to look old. I'm worried he's going to be a little gun shy. And if that's the case, I can't bet the guy. So this is a fireball and popcorn fight for me, John. I got to kind of stay away from this one. It's Damon Jackson or pass. But if Jim Miller fights to the level we've seen, if he's still A10 in there, I think Jim Miller is very live to win this fight. So it's a struggle. It's a real tough one for me here, man. Real quick, guys, we lost John. He will be back momentarily, I believe. So I will address the chat until we get that figure. Oh, there he is. All right. That was quick. You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was saying goodnight to my daughter real quick.
All good. Oh, I thought I was going to have to filibuster for, 2-3 minutes real quick.
No, you're good. 2 seconds. Yeah, no, I went back and forth on this fight a little bit. I'm historically an A10 guy, big Jim Miller fan. I mean, who isn't? But I actually do think this is a winnable fight for him. Obviously, there's some concern with the age, 40 years old, coming off the brutal loss against Bobby King. But, you look at the matchup and it's like that was always going to be a really difficult matchup for Jim Miller. Whereas this one, I think, is a little bit more his speed, because Damon Jackson, is going to look to grapple, which Jim Miller, great grappler, good off his back, opportunistic subs. The only concern really in terms of the grappling is if he just gives up the takedowns, which is definitely within, that's super live here. At times when he gets tired, he kind of, doesn't offer much off his back. That's really the only concern, because I think on the feet, he's not only a better boxer, he's the more active of the two. He's the more durable of the two. He's live to land takedowns himself. This is also at 155. So we have Damon Jackson moving up in weight class. Damon Jackson is somebody who has also struggled with the physicality of some guys. So where you like the style of the Leech, like he just nonstop, relentless with trying to get to the grappling. But like we saw in his last fight where he struggled with the physicality, he was just like flailing and flopping around. Like he doesn't have the athleticism and strength to him. Whereas somebody like Jim Miller, who has the wrestling background, who's the more natural 155er, I think Miller is going to be the more physical of the two. It doesn't necessarily mean that he can't be taken down, but I do think in some of those grappling exchanges, it'll be to his benefit. But I really like the striking of Jim Miller in terms of the striking of Damon Jackson. I expect Miller to be winning the striking. And like I said, I think both guys could have some grappling success. The only real concern with Miller is, if he gets tired and ends up being controlled late in rounds 2 and round 3 or something, then the optics certainly won't look good. But yeah, I kind of like Jim Miller here. So it's another small underdog, but I might be talked into having another A10 bet this weekend.
Yeah, the problem is this fight, I've gone back and forth on so much, John. You're making a whole lot of sense to me. Like, I can be swayed on this fight because I totally didn't even consider that Damon Jackson was moving up in weight for this one. Now, that might improve the cardio, it might improve the chin, blah, blah, blah. But he has naturally been a career-long 145er. So Jim is going to have that physicality advantage. Jim is going to have that power advantage. And round 1, Miller, we've seen it before. The guy's got hands. He can box. And if he's capable of taking somebody down, like we talked about before, wrestler versus jiu-jitsu guy, Jim usually is the one that finds his way on top. I mean, he can rely on the wrestling. He's not just a jiu-jitsu guy. And we have seen Damon Jackson wear out, get tired, and accept bottom many times. Yeah, you're killing me with this one, John. I might be talked into the one last ride with the old dog Jim Miller type of situation here.
I mean, I just feel like we have to do it, right? Like, he's a Jersey boy, cards in New York. He's going to have the hometown. I mean, and like you mentioned, like, people forget he's actually got hands. He's a good boxer. He's got nasty leg kicks too. Like, I really think he's going to be the much better striker. I feel very confident he's going to be winning the striking. It's just, like I mentioned, he can, both guys really can give up takedowns and give up control time. If they do end up grappling, we probably see a lot of scrambling, which I think is exciting, but I think both guys are live to come out, in better positions if that happens. But yeah, give me Jim, especially if the fight plays out on the feet. It's gotta be A10 here.
Damn it. That's it. Dog of the week. We're doing it. We're going Blink Memorial. Dog of the week, you guys. Oh, you're killing me, John. So I did not expect to make this one the dog of the week this week. Last week, we missed because only one dog on the card won. We went 1-1 on our dogs. I picked the wrong one to make the dog of the week. Sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to leave you hanging on that one. But, I think you're just making a ton of sense to me here, John. This is in his backyard. And I haven't heard the R word yet. If I hear retirement fight, it's been coming for a long time. So Jim probably could retire after this one. But if there ever was somebody they would give him for him to retire over, it would be a guy like Damon Jackson. Like, this guy's just as much at the end of his rope as Jim is at this point. So I like it. I'm probably going to end up having to have a taste. And you guys know me. If I'm going to have a taste of somebody like this, where we've seen what Jim can do on the feet, I've talked about how I don't like and don't trust the chin of Damon Jackson. We'll have a look at that knockout prop too.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is, I know you're a tinfoil hat guy, Clint. He had...
I can switch for you. I'm good.
He had the big inspirational win when he had a death in the family over Pat Sabatini. Yes. So now, he got that one that could have potentially been fixed for him. And now he's going to lay down for the retirement win for Jim Miller. So that's the tinfoil hat there. Cash the dog of the week. Cash the tinfoil hat. We're back, baby. A10 this weekend.
All right, A10, here we go. My father-in-law will be excited. One of the very few names on this card that he actually knows. We're going to go ahead and tell him and can maybe get a win this weekend. So good stuff. I like it. All right. And let's see here. Paul's saying it's way too long for UFC 400. Yeah, Jim's not going to make it to UFC 400. I hate to say it. I love the goal, but it's definitely not happening. You guys are talking about, retirement fights. Loki Day is saying how many retirement fights on this card. Could be a couple, man. Could be a couple, definitely. The line I'd have to set like over 1.5 juice to the under, but over 1.5 is definitely live on this one. And Matt Norton, quit spamming my chat. I block people for spamming. I'll get there. Don't worry. I'll get there. I'm not going to spam you because I see what you're doing, but hey, don't worry. I'll address it. We'll get there. Next up, we've got Chris Weidman taking on Eryk, yo boy, Anders. And we just talked about retirement fights, John. Like, what? This could be it for Chris Weidman. He's saying that he's saying all the well, not the right stuff, but he's saying all the stuff. I'm taking it fight by fight. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. Blah blah blah. Like, he's absolutely just this close to hanging it up. And I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Eryk Anders. Okay, I'm a massive fan of the guy. He is. So it's tough. I've actually spoke to Eryk on a personal level multiple times. So just so you guys know, I've got some of my fighters that I'm biased towards, like my guy Brian Boom Kelleher that's come on the show before. Like, I don't want to say anything disparaging about those kinds of guys, but we're breaking down this thing from a betting perspective. So we can't like play nice. We got to not hold back. We got to give our opinion of what's going on here. But I do just want to let you know, first and foremost, that I'm a massive fan of Eryk Anders, and he's a great dude. And I really want to see him succeed. The thing is, John, he's carried his entire career really by his athleticism. He's 37 years old. He was an Alabama State football player, one of these guys that was just an absolute freak athlete that transitioned over to MMA. And he actually made a damn good run at the thing when he first got here. He had that split decision with Lyoto Machida back in the day that it's just crazy how far the physicality took him. But then people kind of started to figure him out and what he was capable of. He got a little bit of wrestling. He got a little bit of jiu-jitsu. He got a little bit of striking. And they go on and on about his vaunted power and explosiveness that he's got. Well, don't get me wrong. He is strong. He is explosive, but it hasn't translated to striking power. The only guys he's actually knocked out were people that are incredibly chinny, and then that one guy that he soccer kicked to hell back in the day. Like, he's not a knockout guy. Eryk Anders, believe it or not, is a decision guy, and he went and spent some time at Fight Ready, and he really worked on his wrestling. And if you go out there and look at what he's been doing lately, he's taking jiu-jitsu and grappling extremely seriously. So now, finally, towards like the end of his run, maybe, he's leveling up the skills in a way that he didn't when he first got to the UFC. And it's starting to kind of show where he's able to take advantage of a lot of situations and then just be big and physical and strong and control guys in there. He's beating these lower level guys, but he's another one where they give him a bit of a bump up in competition and he's not quite there. The Andre Muniz submission where he just kind of toyed with him on the ground. That's a world-class jiu-jitsu guy. I can't knock him for getting submitted in that spot. Jung Young Park, that split decision looks like $1 million these days. Park is on a hell of a run right now, and he fought tooth and nail with that guy. So I really like Eryk Anders as long as they give him the proper matchmaking. Now let's flip over to Chris Weidman here for a second. 16-7, 40 years old. He snapped a 3-fight losing streak with a decision win over Bruno Silva. Now, I'm sorry, 2-fight losing streak. And John, I've got a problem with that last fight because I bet a lot on Chris Weidman. I put a bunch on Chris Weidman that night. And it's because they put him in his backyard. They put him in his hometown where he was supposed to get a win, where they wanted to make a big deal out of Chris Weidman being the hometown guy, and he should have been disqualified. I poked Bruno Silva so many times in that fight. It should have been stopped. He should have had points taken. It should have been a DQ loss. But they're not doing that to the legend, the All-American Chris Weidman in his backyard. It ain't happening. So instead, they go to a technical decision instead, and he wins a greasy split decision. Now, Weidman's got one thing about him, and that's that back class that I talked about. I mentioned that in the last breakdown, that there are these guys that reach a certain level that they're just better than everybody else. And even if they're old, even if they're washed, they can call on that and still win some of these fights. We know how washed Bruno Silva is as well. He has looked like absolute garbage since the fight with Chris Weidman. He's never really gotten it back. Eryk Anders on the other side of this thing, though, again, seems to be kind of late blooming a little bit in his career with some of the stuff he's working on. And from what I understand, he also just recently got clean. So first and foremost, props to the guy. I guess he hasn't been fully clean for years. And this is the first camp or fight that he's had where he's been 100%, I think, alcohol-free from what I understand. Need to double check. Don't cite my sources here because I got to go back and make sure that's accurate. But I believe I read something about that. So I think a clean, motivated, improving Eryk Anders may be able to physically match a retirement age, falling type of knife situation with Chris Weidman. I know Chris Weidman is a much better striker. I understand that. I think Eryk Anders physically might be able to contend with the guy. And frankly, I think Chris Weidman got his miraculous walk-off into the sunset win last time. John, I'm going to switch hats one more time here for you. The fight against Bruno Silva was set up for Chris Weidman to win. The fight against Bruno Silva was literally rigged to the point where this guy should have been DQ'd, and instead they give him a decision victory. That was his happy moment. That was his retirement moment. John, they don't give happy endings in MMA, and they forced one down our throats for Chris Weidman. This is one step too far. Chris Weidman already got his happy ending, and he chose to come on back into the cage. I think Eryk Anders is going to mess that up this weekend. I actually am picking Eryk Anders to go ahead and win this fight because I think he'll be able to just be big and physical, and he'll be able to come forward in ways that Chris Weidman is not going to enjoy. I don't think Chris will have the same success grappling that he thinks he's going to have or has had in the past, and I actually think Anders has the type of strength and power it'll take to slow him down just a little bit. I'm picking your boy to go ahead and play spoiler in the backyard of Chris Weidman at UFC 309.
Yeah, I like the conviction. I'm certainly not convicted on this fight one way or the other. I think you bring up a lot of good points. I already know like this is not going to be a fight that I bet. Like outside of there being like a good live spot, which I don't foresee that being the case really, but it's just one that I don't have a good read on personally. I know fights where I feel confident on my reads, and I know fights that I don't. And this is one that I don't. I believe when my article, which is done, I just haven't posted it yet. I believe I did pick your boy, Eryk Anders, but it's one that I could just see playing out very competitively. He's really a thin margins type of guy when he is winning rounds. He's been in some close decisions, some split decisions. So like I don't feel confident. And like everyone keeps saying, like Weidman in New York, blah, blah, blah. So like I get the angle for both sides. To me, it's just like everything that I see and like all the other like outside stuff just tells me it's probably best for me to sit on the sidelines for that one. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. I don't mind it, John. I really don't. This one's going to be greasy. I mean, like Nigel Lee's saying that Chris Weidman's not going to lose at MSG. Sorry, Clint. Judges are going to fuck you. And that's entirely possible, Nigel. It really is. But there is the angle, I believe Dixon brought it up, is that Weidman's actually 0-3 at MSG. So he's already lost many times at MSG. This one's more tinfoil hat than anything, John, as far as I think that when you've got a guy who could have retired, who they gave the opportunity to retire on top, you don't get that run back for you many times. They don't do you any favors. I just think this is going to be a tough fight, and it's kind of going to be a must-win situation for Eryk Anders. It's a Super Bowl for Eryk Anders, whereas it's just another night at the office for Chris, and he's not quite got it anymore. You know, I think we could see Anders fight tooth and nail for this one, where Chris Weidman could maybe go home a little disappointed. And on top of that, this line, guys, is suspect as hell. This is a betting show, right? So I'm not just saying straight up picks. Why is Chris Weidman the underdog? this is a spot where I think a lot of people are going to bite on the plus money for Chris Weidman. And that just feels like the bookies dangling a little carrot to me, John. Like, the guy is a legend. The guy is a champion. We're at MSG. All this lines up to Chris Weidman should be the guy taking the money. And they're giving you plus money. They're making it look more enticing. Why? And I kind of think this may be the spot where they scoop a little bit and the chalk is the right side.
All right.
Yeah, I could break the tinfoil cap out for that one too. All right, guys, real quick, let's shout out some of those sponsors. First and foremost, Home of Fight, Home of Bets. Please subscribe if you haven't. We've got over 1,000 live viewers. Thank you all for being here on a Monday night to talk UFC 309. We are trying to get to 10K subscribers on this channel by the end of the year, so please subscribe. And if you are looking for winners, the Home of Picks premium subscription. The boys are up over 140 units in 2024. Absolutely smashing it this year. We will give you a 7-day free trial. Usually we do 5-day free trials, but for a Veterans Day special, we're going to do a 7-day free trial. Promo code 11. I know that's not sexy. It's just promo code 11. They're probably going to change that to like Jones or Goat or Duck. Something along the lines that'll be a little bit more sexy for UFC 309 coming up. But for now, it's just promo code 11. So we've got something to work with here on the show. So make sure you check that out, subscribe and sign up for that free 7-day trial to go ahead and give it a shot. Let's bank some winners for UFC 309. Spectation Sports is somebody that you guys need to know about if you like regional scene MMA, if you're studying for next year's Dana White or next season's Dana White's Contender Series. They've got a bunch of action. Cage Titans just had an absolutely epic card. Filthy finishes all over it with UFC veterans. Maverick MMA is coming up. Promo code DieHard will get you a 20% discount on your subscription to that. Make sure you check it out. Link in the description below. And Bet Openly, you guys. I am giving away absolutely piles of money on Bet Openly over here. This site is made by gamblers for gamblers. We have saved $8,451,000 for gamblers because of the reduced juice, guys. 1% juice. It's peer-to-peer betting, so a degenerate on the other side of the screen is the one accepting your bet on here. And because of that, everybody gets better numbers. The winner pays that 1% at the end. That's the finder's fee for making it all work. There's no limiting. You're not going to get kicked off the site or anything like that for winning too much, because it's literally other people filling your bets. They don't care. It's like playing poker. You can take somebody else's chips, not a problem. They'll just take their 1% and call it a day. So make sure you check it out. Use the link in the description below. This is the wave of the future, and I'm doing constant giveaways, contests. So if you can get signed up, that's the way to, get some free cash. Try it out. But I do got to tell you guys, I got my wrist slapped today. I got in a little bit of trouble today because they want me to reward people that are actually using and playing on the site. There's many of you who have signed up, who have not deposited a penny, and then are playing in the free contest that I do. And there's nothing wrong with that, you guys. That's what I want you to do so you can make some free cash and then try it out without any skin off your back. But do me a favor, just deposit 10, 20 bucks. That'll go a long way. And then any contests I'm doing in the future, my boss will see that you have put money on the site and you're one of us. You're one of the people using Bet Openly. And then you're going to be eligible to win all the contests and stuff like that we run, and we give out free money. So please do me a favor. Check out Bet Openly. I promise you're going to like it. It's an awesome platform. We just got an app. You will save money long-term using this platform, but also just put 10 or 20 bucks in there. Just deposit for me so that give me some credit, you guys. Help me out. Help your boy out. Last but certainly not least, Fight Numbers. The man behind Fight Numbers actually joins us on the show today. So, John, I thought instead of doing my usual spiel for Fight Numbers, I would let you come on and go ahead and say yourself what's so good about the Fight Numbers platform.
Yeah, totally not biased. So I'll give you an objective opinion. If you're into DraftKings DFS at all, I have the best ownership projections in the industry. I'm not just saying that. We literally back tested against everyone else in the industry. And now we've started tweeting out those results each week, so you can actually see the stats behind it. So if you play DraftKings, I believe ownership is the most important part of that, and we have the best, so definitely check that out. That's part of our DFS package, $30 a month. It also gets you access to Fight Pick Sim, which is a proprietary tool made by Nate Latshaw that uses simulations to basically try to give you an idea of how the slate would play out, and it's fully customizable based on your picks. We also have an odds screen that updates in real time for live betting. That's part of the betting package. We have a fight prop finder, which is completely free for anybody to use. You don't even need an account. That's under the tools page at fightnumbers.com. It's completely free. It pulls up method of victory props across the market, helping you guys get the best price. And then, of course, we have the picks behind the paywall of Pepe and Ozzy, some of the most well-known guys in the industry. So yeah, check it out. A lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff at fightnumbers.com. Some free, some you have to pay for, but it's worth your while. And you can use promo code DIEHARD to get yourself a nice discount on the way out.
Perfect. Thank you, my guy. Promo code DIEHARD, link in the description below. John's one of the good guys in the industry. Obviously, he's doing his best to help people out. And like I mentioned, I actually have made a little bit of money back instead of straight up donating in DFS thanks to the tools on fightnumbers.com. So especially if you're doing DFS, you guys check it out. There's plenty of other stuff just for betting purposes. So definitely worth it for everybody, but especially if you're trying to get good at playing DFS. That'll do it for the shout outs and for the sponsors for now, you guys. Let's get back into the breakdowns. UFC 309. I am joined by John Kelly DFS, and we are going to talk about Jonathan Martinez. He is taking on Marcus the Maniac McGhee. Oh, what a fight. John, I don't know what to do with this one, okay? There's a lot of moving parts here. So J-Mart is a guy that I feel like has been flying a little close to the sun lately. He's 19-5, 30 years old. And until just very recently, he was training at, what's the name of the gym that broke up? Factory X. Apparently there was a whole bunch of drama. Gym broke up and kind of everyone went their own way. I don't know what happened. I wish I had a juicy story to tell you guys. But a lot of that camp has split and gone their own way. Jonathan Martinez is one of those ones that has split off and gone his own way. And from what I understand now, he's actually his own head coach. That's always a bit of a red flag to me, you guys. It is extremely difficult to run a camp, to be able to analyze your own strengths and weaknesses, to know exactly what it is you need, and still be able to move forward and improve, and then be good enough at analyzing your opponent to, develop a perfect game plan for working around what they do well. I feel like you need a head coach. I feel like you need a team. MMA is a team sport, believe it or not, and there's a lot of work, moving parts behind the scenes. I don't really like Jonathan Martinez being his own head coach, coming off of a loss that snapped a massive, 6-7 fight win streak that he was on before this. And now he's just going to kind of do the dang thing himself without as much support. I don't like it. The guy is a leg kicker. He's got several leg kick TKOs. He is very defensively sound when it comes to his range and his striking. He's kind of a coiled cobra. He likes to leap in, strike, get out of dodge before you can counter him. He rolls well. He also just manages the control with those kicks. He keeps you at bay, chops at the legs. I wouldn't be at all shocked if he ends up with another leg kick TKO or two in his career before it's all said and done. So I do like the overall game of Jonathan Martinez, but I also feel like he's a little low-key chinny. I know that sounds weird because he's only got one knockout loss on his record. And frankly, I bet the KO prop when he fought Jose Aldo. I thought Aldo was going to be the guy to really prove me right on the chinny Jonathan Martinez thing that I've been spouting here. It seems like nonsense now because, again, he's only been knocked out once. But I really thought Jose Aldo would be the guy to land on him. I do think if you land on him with enough force and enough power, you can put him away. Aldo's not really knocking people out these days. So maybe it's, a little column A, little column B. Jose's old and Jonathan's not as chinny as I kind of made him out to be, but he doesn't react well to power shots. We've seen him get wobbled a bunch. These guys have just not been able to really put him all the way away. Marcus McGhee, 9-1, 34 years old, training out of the MMA lab. This guy looks like he was designed in a lab. My God, just so much physicality. He's beefy, he's muscular, he's strong, and he's really well-rounded. He's one of these guys that came out of absolute left field, John. He fought his way to LFA and just seemed kind of like a throwaway prospect. And now here he is in the UFC on a 3-fight win streak, all 3 wins by finish. The last one, the most impressive one, coming over Gaston Bolanos, a guy that we just made some money on last week, who we know is tough, who is durable, and he sparked him out cold in the second round. Marcus McGhee's got hands. Now, I do have to make my man in the chat proud. I will fully admit to the fact that I did not believe in Marcus McGhee to the tune of I bet JP buys. You guys, that's a thing. That actually happened. I put my hard-earned money on JP buys in the year 2023. Now, I mentioned 2023 was the year of the dog. I was rapid firing underdog shots. It was the most profitable year betting of my life. So I was riding hot. And man, I felt like I just couldn't be touched. So I did take that shot. It was towards the end of the year where I really cooled off and then led into 2024, where it's been nothing but chalk and I have not been able to get straight. So that was kind of the beginning of my downfall there. I really was cooling off at that point in time in the year. So I got to take that back. I got to apologize for that one, that JP buys has just got awful and I don't know what I was thinking, but I did in fact do that. So I have a hard time sitting in front of you today selling you Marcus McGhee. I have a hard time telling you that I believe so much in Marcus McGhee that I think I should be, betting him as a favorite over Jonathan Martinez, because I thought that JP buys was live enough in that fight. Now, granted, I was playing, a number, not necessarily a name, because he was like plus 275, plus 300 or something like that. I was taking a big dog shot on it. But this line is interesting because Marcus McGhee is a short favorite here. He is minus 145 right now ish, and plus 120 on Jonathan Martinez. Need I remind you that number looks different on Bet Openly, minus 132 on Marcus McGhee. To come back on Martinez is plus 132, so better numbers on both sides. But man, I feel like everybody is piling in on the Marcus McGhee train, and this is a massive, massive step up in competition. And frankly, it's a buy low spot on Jonathan Martinez. He's been facing the who's who of this weight class: Cub Swanson, Said Nurmagomedov, Adrian Yanez, Jose Aldo. And he comes off losing a decision to Jose Aldo as a minus 175 favorite. And now he's a dog to Marcus McGhee. John, I can't wrap my mind around it. This is a J-Mart spot. This is a buy low on Jonathan Martinez. I think we have to play the dog on this one. I hate it. I don't like it. I think Marcus McGhee can knock this guy out. I don't want to go to war with Jonathan Martinez, but based on the number, I kind of feel like I have to. Am I crazy? What do you make of this fight? What's going on here?
I definitely don't think it's crazy. I mean, I think all the Martinez takes are pretty valid. He's faced better competition. He is coming off a loss to somebody that's much more experienced than McGhee. But I also think that it's kind of one, like in terms of the matchup, it's going to come down to whether or not McGhee can deal with the leg kicks of Martinez, not just the damage that he's going to do to his legs, but also to get around them, to be able to get inside and land his big power shots. I tend to think that he probably can. I'm not like a big McGhee guy per se, but I do think the fight probably plays out pretty competitively. Neither guy looks to grapple. So it's literally just going to be active leg kicks from Martinez that are scoring, but not necessarily doing a ton of damage unless he really compromises the leg. And then McGhee having more success with the hands. And that's where I think if he can potentially hurt Martinez, or even if he doesn't, if he's just having the bigger impact shots, I think in a close fight, that probably is going to be enough to swing rounds. I also, like you, think Martinez is a little bit chitty. You mentioned he's been hurt multiple times. He's been knocked down 4 times in the UFC, obviously knocked out by Davy Grant. And McGhee has some serious pop. So, like, I think this is one where I don't see either side having like a huge edge, but give me the guy that I think is going to be landing more damage to the head and the more powerful striker, and I think that's McGhee. So it's one that I probably won't end up betting, but I am going to side with McGhee in terms of a pick.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat here, man, where I think I have to keep my hands in my pockets a little bit because everything in my process screams that I want to be on the Marcus McGhee side, and I just can't help but feel that the line is wrong. So I don't want to go against myself. You know what I mean? I'm picking Jonathan Martinez, and I kind of think he's got to do it by decision because I don't know that Marcus McGhee is a guy that you can really have an easy time finishing. And if you expose yourself to getting your opponent out of there, you're at your most vulnerable at that exact moment. So I don't know that Jonathan Martinez is going to want to put himself in that kind of danger. I think he'll play it safe, keep the range, move around, use his footwork, and kind of make Marcus McGhee chase him a little bit. So I'm thinking it's going to be Martinez by points. But again, I'm not really liking it, you guys. I'll say that outright. All right. We're getting to the good stuff here. A couple fights left here on the card, you guys. Mauricio, one shot, Ruffy, and he takes on James Llontop, Goku himself. What a fight, you guys. What a fight. I mean, so first and foremost, John, I just got to say, there's a lot of guys out there that have been compared to the one and only Conor McGregor. There's a lot of guys that we've said, this guy looks like Conor McGregor. Well, now it's my turn. Mauricio Ruffy really reminds me of Conor McGregor, man. The way he moves, the way his stance is, the explosiveness, the way he explodes into strikes, the knockout power, the quick twitch muscle. Like, this guy looks like he watched tape of Conor McGregor when he was 9 years old and then made that his entire identity to the point that he started striking like him and finally made it to the UFC level. Now, I tried to not quite fade one of the fighting nerds last week. I wanted to live bet Neil Magny, assuming he survived round one, but I bet an over 1.5. And even that was too much to do against the fighting nerds in 2024, man. Thankfully I didn't put my money on Magny because he got smoked out of there in the first round. I thought with a couple seconds left on the clock, he could survive, hang on, maybe hit a takedown in round two. Just get me the over 1.5. Survive. And unfortunately, that was not possible. And I lost my over 1.5 while we were at it. These guys are on a roll, man. The fighting nerds are not to be toyed with right now. I've learned that the hard way. I have doubted them at every step. I have guessed against them at every turn. I have bet against them more times than I care to admit. And even in last week's main event, I still tried to find a way to go against them instead of getting on them. So anybody that has been putting their hard-earned money on the fighting nerds has been generously rewarded time and time again. I think I'm done, John. I think I'm done second guessing the fighting nerds. Ruffy is a guy that they seem to be very excited about. Lots of hype around this guy. He's kind of more of a moment winner than he is a minute winner. But when he connects, he just deads people. I want to go so far as to say he might have the death touch. James Llontop, 14-4. He's 25 years old. And he's almost the exact opposite. This guy's tougher than a $2 steak. This guy will come forward and take everything you've got and then just try to answer back. He dropped a split decision against Slava Claus in his last fight, where I will pat myself on the back. One of the only good bets I've made in 2024 was taking that big dog price tag, the buy low on Vyacheslav Borishev in that last fight. But there were moments that made my butthole pucker that night, John. James is not to be messed with. He had Slava hurt several times throughout the course of that fight, and it was greasy and it was close. He almost won the dang thing. So he is officially 0-2 off Dana White's Contender Series. This just screams feeding frenzy to me. Like, he had a bad performance and got finished. He had a really good performance and just didn't quite get there. And now they're going, all right, you're done. Give him a fighting nerd. The UFC is really just kind of throwing away James Llontop in this spot, in my opinion. Now, is he the caliber of guy who can dig deep, come back, win this fight as a massive underdog? Maybe. Maybe he is, but not with my money, John. I'm not betting James Llontop to pull off the upset of the century here against the hottest team in MMA today. That ain't me. Minus 750 for Mauricio Ruffy. It's going to be real hard to find an angle to get money down on Ruffy in any way, shape, or form. So I probably won't actually have money on him because the KO prop is going to be a lot like Prates last week. Minus 400 just makes you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit that's how far they'll go. But that's kind of what I think is going to happen here. I kind of feel like it's going to be just pot shots from Ruffy until he either cracks the chin of Llontop, which is a tall order, or wins a little bit of a one-sided decision here. But plus 525 is the underdog, James Llontop. And are you brave enough, John? Are you willing to roll the dice, or are you with me and everybody else that the favorite is probably going to roll here on this one?
I don't think it's am I brave enough? I almost feel like it's like these are the spots where I almost have to bet. I think like obviously I agree. Huffy's a great prospect. Big knockout threat. All of his wins have come by knockout. Fighting nerds, like everyone's gonna glaze the fighting nerds and glaze Ruffy.
Kind of have to.
And I mean, it makes total sense. But you look at the price tag, and I'm a guy that like almost solely is going on numbers. And like, I think this number is too wide, honestly. And I know that's going to be an unpopular opinion, but like when you give a price tag, like a -900, like that literally is like you're giving him the squash match of all squash matches. That's not what we have here. Like, sure, he's a better striker than Llontop, no doubt about it. But the dude still has some questions in his game. For starters, he's only fought into the third round once in his career. He also has been outstruck at times in his career where he did not look great. His defensive grappling, I think we still have a lot of questions about. So like when you give me this price tag, you better be very sure that he's bulletproof in a matchup like this. And I'm just not. Now, I do think he wins, and I do think the most likely outcome is knockout. So don't come for my head. I know the chat's probably, all riled up because everyone's, it's got to be a Ruffy knockout. I agree. I'm saying that I believe that is the most likely outcome. But at +600 or whatever it is, like Llontop's, first of all, never been knocked out in his career. The dude's super tough. He's been hurt before, but he's tough as a dog. He's got good cardio. He's got good volume. He's grappled on the regional scene. Like there are at least reasons for slight concerns relative to the price tag that we're getting. That's all I'm saying. So for me, yeah, I think if brave is the word, I think I am to maybe just put a small wager on Llontop, one that I expect to lose, and I'm fine with it losing. But at +600, I'm going to pay to find out. We'll see.
Llontop by points at +900, maybe?
At that point, I would just take the money line. If you are going to get greedy, I think like play into the cardio, potentially defensive grappling angle, do like Llontop sub 2-3 at like massive numbers or something like that. Or 2-3 KO, something like that. If you want to get real greedy. But yeah, like you guys, I think it's Huffy by knockout. I just, pour in a little bit of cool water on the hype job, I guess.
I like it. Hey, I've been doing absolutely everything that I could to pour some water on these guys, and it ain't working. All right, I'm just oiling them up instead. Like I'm using the wrong bottle apparently, John. So yeah, I'm done. I'm not doing it. It ain't me. Godspeed to any of you who have the guts to try and fade this guy. It won't be me. This just feels like silver platter type of matchmaking to me. And I got to stay away from it when that happens. Bilal in the chat says that I should join the Fighting Nerds gym. I mean, I'd fit right in. I just need to put the tape between the glasses, and I totally would be in there. You should see my abs. I look a whole lot like Kaio does. So I'm right there with you, man. I absolutely should join the gym. All right, guys. Next up, we've got Karine Silva. She's taking on Vivi Araujo. And I like this fight, man. I like this fight a lot. So Karine Silva has been a tough one for me. We've seen how some of these Brazilian women's MMA prospects specifically will look like hot garbage rolling into the UFC. And then they just go on the run of their life. Like somehow between when the UFC found them to the moment they signed the contract, that's when they turn the corner and they put it all together. And it just happens time and time and time again. I don't understand what's in the water over there that this keeps happening, but it does. She is a nasty physical specimen. 9 wins by sub, 8 wins by KO, just an elite finisher. She's got the physicality that makes other women wilt, and she can do it with her kicks from outside. She's got one of the tightest squeezes on her I've ever seen. I mean, when she fought Myra Moroz, I actually had a bet on Moroz that night because I felt like the technical side of things was going to make the difference. I felt like Karine Silva gets a little sloppy. She gets a little overexposed, and she does get tired sometimes. If the fight does get extended, it rarely gets extended, but when it does, it's like there might be holes in the game. I thought the wrestling of Moroz would make a difference. Silva was just too strong. Silva was just too much woman for Myra Moroz. And she carried that through to a win over who was then Ariane Lipski, now Ariane De Silva, which was an even more spectacular performance against another step up in competition. The UFC's putting her to the test this weekend, John. She's absolutely getting a real test in Vivi Araujo. Now, Vivi is 12-6. That record is looking a little worse for wear. She's 37 years old and she's fallen on tough times. 1-3 in her last 4, but she really has been going up against the best of the best. They gave her Amanda Ribas. They gave her Alexa Grasso. She got by Jennifer Maia, and they gave her my girl Natalia Silva. So she is really losing to the next wave of contenders or current title challenger-esque level fighters. She still got it, man. You go back and you watch that Natalia Silva fight. Natalia had to fight the perfect game plan. She had to really use her footwork. She had to stick and move, and it took a lot out of her to pull that off for 15 minutes. I've never seen Natalia Silva clock watching before. And in round 3, with about 3 minutes left to go, she was looking up at the clock and going, oh God, like you could see the look on her face that it was very difficult for her to stick to that game plan and keep it up as long as she did. It took all of it to get there. Vivi just barrels into people, pins them up against the fence, physically drags them down to the ground. She is strong. She's got good cardio. She is very, very difficult to finish. She's only been finished one time in her entire career. She got knocked out way back in the day by Sarah Froda, I want to say. So what a weird random callback there in MMA that she lost to that chick years and years ago. So she is going to really put Karine Silva to the test. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do here because I've been kind of a Karine Silva hater to this point, and now she sits as a minus 300 favorite over somebody who I think is by far the toughest test that she's ever run into. If you don't think that Vivi is getting finished, then you're in for what should be a very competitive fight. I don't know if Karine Silva is winning minutes against Vivi for a full 15-minute fight. I am very, very tempted on a veteran dog shot here in this spot, John. Talk some sense into me. What do I do in this spot? Because I am leaning towards Viviane Araujo as the bet.
I want to be there with you. I do. I can't do it, man. And the reason I want to be there is because I'm not super sold on Silva. Like, sure, she's a dangerous finisher, like you mentioned. Good submission grappler, very, very slick on the mat. She also is powerful on the feet. She's big for the division. But then you look at some of the other things. Outside of her overhand right, she has basically nothing on the feet. Mm-hmm. If you can force her to strike with you over 15 minutes and put a pace on her, she doesn't look good. She has no defense. Her volume drops off a cliff. Like, she has to have the grappling success. Now, the reason why I probably am not going to be tempted on the dog shot here is because Araujo, I've also been kind of lower on than the market. I bet Andrea Lee against her. I bet Amanda Ribas against her. I think there was one other one as well. But Araujo, yes, she's got power on the feet. But I also think she struggles in terms of her defense. She struggles in terms of her gas tank, which has been an issue basically her entire career. So if I'm looking to fade Silva, I want someone that I'm confident that can keep it on the feet and that I'm confident is going to put a pace on her and have the better cardio. I don't think Vivi is either of those things, to be honest with you. I think Silva can get the takedowns. And when she does, I think she's live to finish Vivi or just control her. I mean, Amanda Ribas controlled her for 10 minutes or whatever it was. She was controlled at times by Andrea Lee as well. And I think Silva is a little bit heavier, maybe not as much technically sound on top as Amanda Ribas, but in terms of her physicality and, she's going to be doing damage or hunting for subs. So I think it stings me to say, because I've been kind of a Silva hater. I bet Ariane Lipski against her, but I feel like Lipski actually had at least some of the things. Obviously, she couldn't keep it on the feet, right? But she had some of the other advantages that I'm not as convinced that Araujo is going to have. So not going to bet it at this price, but I do think Silva, unfortunately, probably wins, and then hopefully we can get a better spot.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to actually pull the trigger on it. You know, you guys, the best women's MMA angle of all time is Brazilian lesbians with a neck tattoo. Vivi does not have a tatted neck. So, I got to go back and double check, but I believe she checks one of those two boxes, just not both of them that I would need to pull the trigger. So if I go to Instagram and it turns out Vivi's got a brand new fresh neck tattoo, oh, that play will be locked in so fast it'll make your head spin. But at this point, I think we're probably just going to have to sit back and pass. I'm tempted, John. I will look at the numbers maybe when they drop, like on DraftKings, those plus 3.5 spread bets that we've been talking about a lot lately. I think that might make some sense in this fight because I could see if Silva doesn't get a finish, I think Vivi probably will win at least one round. She'll be able to outlast someone like Silva, maybe take over with the cardio a little bit late in the fight, have a round 3 go her way, and have this fight be a little closer than the money line would look. I might be tempted on that side of things. Ethan does say that he'll take Silva, so I guess that's our shot bet for the week, Ethan. I'll go ahead and take the I'm kind of putting myself in a position where I have to drink next week here. I hope you understand that because I'm taking a plus 225 underdog here for you on the shot bet this week. So you owe me a good one at some point down the road there, Ethan. But if you want Silva, I'll take Viviane on that shot bet here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Yeah, it's a tough call, man. That fight should play out close. We'll see. And frankly, if Silva gets by this one, though, John, I don't know when that fade is ever going to come. You know, that she's going to have kind of proven herself to that point that I think I'll have to respect her. And I don't know if I'll want to fade her if she gets by this one. This would be the spot for me, you know?
Okay. I think it's more of like if she gets past this one, then they're going to give her someone even better and somebody that I'm more confident can kind of take advantage of those holes. Like, I mean, I don't know I don't know the rankings by heart, so I don't know who that next opponent would be. But like, if she fights Natalia Silva, like I'm heavily betting Natalia Silva in that spot.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, Natalia Silva is my girl. We're going with Natalie.
As Silva works her way up, I think there'll be at least one or two juicy spots we can maybe take advantage.
All right, we'll have to keep our eyes open for it for sure. All right, guys, next up, we got Bo Nickal. He's taking on Paul Craig. What a fight. Okay, so Bo, this is it. You guys, this is it. This is the one. We have officially hit the critical mass point of Bo Nickal's career because he has been softball. The UFC has brought him along the way they need to for him to have time to grow and develop from not being just a wrestler to having a well-rounded enough MMA game to compete. This guy is an all-star. This guy is such a stud wrestler that he didn't need any other skill set to be able to compete with some of the best fighters on planet Earth. But if they want him to take gold, if they want Bo Nickal to get to the point of being a champion in mixed martial arts, he needed to round out the rest of his game. He needed jiu-jitsu. He needed striking. He needed defense. And now we are testing whether or not he's made the improvements that they thought he could make. Paul Craig may be a meme lord. Paul Craig has some of the most wild, insane finishes you'll ever see, but that's because of how dangerous the guy is. This looks like a softball matchup to get Bo Nickal into the rankings, but instead what it actually is the most dangerous litmus test of all time. They are giving Bo a guy who can knock him out with a random ass spinning back fist. They are giving Bo a guy who has snapped off the arm of several title challengers and former champions at 205 pounds. You have to respect every single ability that Paul Berju Craig has in that cage. I think Bo wins this fight, John. Shocker. I'm picking the 10-1 favorite here, but I just want to emphasize that this really is a fight where we will find out a lot about where Bo Nickal is. Does he struggle with this fight? Does Paul Craig slow him down, hurt him, give him pause? Any of it. You know, in Bo's last fight, when they gave him the Cody Brundage treatment, I actually hit Bo Nickal in round 2. Because I told everybody, I was like, you guys, he's not just going to continue running through people in the first round. He's leveling up in the game. It's going to take more than what he's shown before to actually get some of these wins. One of my favorite things to do when betting MMA, John, is to target steps up in competition and either bet against the person stepping up, or if you're going to bet on them, look at the decision prop. Because when you take that big class step up, it takes more out of you to get the win. You have to mind your P's and Q's. You have to stay safe in certain situations. You actually might have to battle back from adversity. And when that happens, you're not necessarily the potent offensive finisher that you were when you were fighting cans that nobody cared about. So in this kind of a spot, I could see this fight get extended. Now, Paul Craig at 36 years old, he's been knocked out 5 times, you guys. Unfortunately, Paul Craig is about as reckless as it gets. This guy likes to go out there, push a pace, cause you to scramble, and then in that chaos tries to find an opportunity to sink in a submission of his own and get the win that way. And unfortunately, when he's fighting guys who can't shy away from the chaos or won't shy away from the chaos, they end up finding him before he finds them. He doesn't have much durability. The chin definitely is a problem. I mean, Caio Borralho, for as good as he is, isn't knocking out very many people. He had no issues connecting with Paul Craig and putting him down. I do believe that Bo Nickal can win this fight. Brendan Allen was able to out wrestle and out scramble this guy, out hustled him, tapped him out deep in that fight. I could see Bo doing that, but I also could see Bo being a little on the small side. I could see Bo struggling with the physicality and size of a guy like Paul Craig, and maybe greasing this thing out to being a decision. I think the way to look, John, is the over 1.5. I know I got burned on that last fight with Carlos Prates and Neil Magny, but frankly, I think Bo being a grappling specialist, he's going to have to take his time. And with somebody like Paul Craig, it's going to not be something where he dices through him like a hot knife through butter. I think he's going to have to set stuff up. So I do think this fight will get extended a little bit. We might see a round 2, round 3 finish from Bo Nickal, but I don't think it's just going to be a round 1 bludgeoning where he runs through a guy like Paul Craig. So I'm boldly going to say that Bo Nickal passes the test and wins this fight, but that plus 750 Bo Nickal by points, yeah, that'll get a taste.
Okay. I would say, so how you in the chat feels about Mauricio Huffy in his matchup, that's how I feel about Bo Nickal in this fight. I think Bo does whatever he wants here. I mean, it's not a hot take. He's 10-1. I really don't have much to add. I mean, you said it all. I just kind of think he does pass that test, but in a way that results in him knocking out Paul Craig inside the first round. And the only thing
First round KO.
The only thing you didn't mention was the President Donald Trump narrative. Bo Nickal is historically a big Trump guy. Trump wins. Now we get a Bo Nickal card at MSG. Maybe even a Trump walkout, and Bo Nickal's getting the first round finish.
Oh, John, that is so fair. Okay. Now
I'm
I know
giving
Bo
you too
is
much
team
tinfoil ammo this week.
No, we're switching hats again, man. I usually save the good stuff for Friday, but the Donald Trump Bo Nickal victory, that's a whole new level on this thing, okay? Because if he is getting showcased in front of Trump, you're absolutely right. This man is not going to be hanging on for legs. This guy is not going to be trying to squeeze out a win. He's going to be looking for blood and trying to show out for the newly voted in president of the United States. So that's a powerful angle, one that I did not consider. I like it. I may still have to sprinkle the plus 750 on the decision, just having a little bit of faith in Paul Craig, but there's no secret what the UFC is doing here. Bo Nickal is supposed to win this fight. Bo Nickal is supposed to get some kind of a highlight reel on this fight. I do think that maybe ground and pound is a path to victory for Bo. Is that how you see it, or do you think he actually outstrikes him and lands something big on the feet?
I think he knocks him out on the feet. I think he could sub him too, honestly. I think he just does what he wants.
Okay.
I think it's big time Bo Nickal spot.
The way Brendan Allen kind of boa constricted him and then choked him out is probably a little more likely for someone with the grappling pedigree of Bo. But I do know, if he can posture up, obviously he can ground and pound. I'm not overly impressed with Bo Nickal's striking, man. I actually bet on and cashed the Val Woodburn KO. And the angle for that was that Val Woodburn is bad. And also Bo actually would struggle to take down that kind of a tank of a human being. So it'd be easier to use his hands than his other skill sets in that fight. But I'm still not sold that he's actually like a really good boxer or anything like that. So I'm not sure if I like a standing KO from Bo Nickal. I could see him dicing to mount and then posturing up and just like raining down elbows, that kind of a thing. So the path is there for a KO, but it just depends on when. All right. Okay. I like all the tinfoil hat coming from you, John. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
I just want to see you keep wearing the hat. That's all.
I don't blame you. All right, guys. Co-main event. Do Bronx. Charles Oliveira takes on Michael Chandler. They are running it back. And I cannot believe, John, we're actually talking about an opponent for Michael Chandler who might step in the cage with him. It's been years, man. It's been years. Michael Chandler was chasing that McGregor dog for 2 straight years. He finally got smart. He finally realized what we all knew, and that's that McGregor's never stepping foot in the octagon ever again. After doing a whole show of The Ultimate Fighter, finally Michael Chandler folded his hand and decided to look elsewhere. He draws Charles Oliveira. There's history between these two, as we know. Michael Chandler kind of worked his way up the ranks in the UFC, got that short road to the title when he first got here, and he fell victim to Charles Oliveira last time. Round 2 TKO, big time ground and pound from Do Bronx for the belt in that fight. Charles Oliveira since then has found himself in a weird position. So he gets beaten by Islam Makhachev. Makhachev wants nothing to do with the rematch with this guy. He's made that extremely clear. He ends up getting a TKO win over Beneil Dariush in the first round, where everybody wanted to say that Charles Oliveira was cooked. I could not believe he was an underdog in that spot. And then he is frankly one bad escape away from another undeniable title shot. Charles Oliveira coming off a split decision loss to Arman Tsarukyan, the man who is currently in line, the #1 contender for that title. And it all came down to the ass pull submission defense. And I don't mean ass pull as in random. I mean literally ass pull. We've seen people defending these guillotines and chokes by jumping out of their own shorts. And that's what Arman Tsarukyan had to do. John, we were about 2 seconds away from having Charles Oliveira being the #1 contender by way of submission, except Arman Tsarukyan pulled a black beast Derek Lewis and said my balls was hot and jumped out of his pants to avoid getting submitted in the fight that night. It was incredible. So Charles Oliveira still got it, guys. I have said a lot of things about Charlie O in the past. I've talked about how sometimes he will fold up, sometimes he's a little chinny, he can't always take the heat. We saw Islam was able to land big power shots on him, and that really set up the submission that took place. Michael Chandler is a guy you got to worry about the big explosive power shots, but frankly, I think Michael Chandler's a coin flip in every single fight that he's in. Not from a betting line perspective, John, but that's the way he fights, is that he just says, I'm either killing you or you're killing me. He just comes forward and is a ball of fury until somebody dies. Now, again, doesn't mean actual coin flip from a betting perspective, but he's willing to just roll the dice so hard on every single fight that you can't count him out. I was this close to cashing a Tony Ferguson ticket, baiting this guy, and then he hit him with an Anderson Silva front kick. Like, what? A technique he's never showed before in his life, lands it perfectly and just ends Tony Ferguson's career in the second round after losing the entire first. This guy goes out there and finds ways to win. Now, you got to look at the run he's on. 1-3 in his last 4, 2-year-long layoff, all the juice money can buy. The only guy he beat was Tony Ferguson, and then he did spark Dan Hooker when he first got to the UFC. So you got to wonder if he's actually competitive at this level. Now, I fully believe that Michael Chandler is capable of taking the head off of anybody in this weight class if he can land. But I still just think that Charles Oliveira is way too well-rounded for him, man. I think Charles Muay Thai is going to cause a problem for him. Charles Oliveira being the better grappler. We've seen Michael Chandler struggle on the ground. I mean, if you're getting submitted by Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira definitely is the guy that can do that kind of thing to you. I just think Charles has got more gas in the tank. I think he's got a higher ceiling. And I think Michael Chandler off a 2-year layoff is not the guy I necessarily want to put my money on at 38 years old. I think we might see a regressed version of him coming into this fight. So it's Charles Oliveira for me.
Yeah, all valid points, and I largely agree with pretty much everything, except for wondering whether or not he's competitive. I think he's clearly proven, despite not winning a lot of those fights, he's clearly proven he's competitive. I mean, even the first time they fought, I mean, he was seconds away from finishing Oliveira. People forget they were round 1. Drops him. You know, other refs have stopped it for less damage when Oliveira's getting his head scrambled a little bit there. And then, of course, Charles comes right back, hurts him, almost finishes him, and then eventually finishes him in the beginning of the second round. Then you look at the Poirier fight, where it's like he almost finishes Poirier, and then Poirier almost finishes him, and then it looks like he's dead. Go at the end of round 1, he comes out round 2 and just totally dominates Poirier in the grappling. He controlled him the entire round 2, and then it's like beginning of round 3, he tries that whatever they call it, like lateral drop takedown or whatever. I don't know the term. And like then he's just done. Like, and Poirier submits him, but it was more of like a quit job. Like the dude just has no sense of like pacing whatsoever. He just redlines everything, and that's why I love watching him fight, because it's never a boring fight. He is like you touched on it, he's either trying to kill you or he's going out on his shield, and he's okay with that, and that's why he's such a fan favorite. And Charles Oliveira is similar to a degree. Both of these guys are so dangerous. The upside with Oliveira is because even though he's chinny and Chandler could crack him, well, guess what? Oliveira can crack Chandler too, and Chandler is arguably pretty chinny himself at this point. He's taken a ton of damage, not just in the UFC, but even prior. So not only that, but then Oliveira has the upside with the leg kicks, which I think could play a factor. He landed a couple heavy ones the first time they fought. Chandler's very, very wide stance, very heavy on that lead leg, and doesn't check them pretty much ever. But also Oliveira can get a little bit more risky on the feet because people are so worried about going to the ground with him. So that's why he's able to find those openings like that left hook that ended up ending Michael Chandler. So it's one where I certainly see the case for both sides. Like Chandler, I almost always, at a price like this, I almost always want to back him just because I know he's at least going to have a big moment. I know he could potentially find a finish. And that's why I want to get sucked in. But it's still like, even if he has a moment, like unless he just flat out KOs Charles Oliveira, I think the same thing's going to happen. He's going to redline. Oliveira is eventually going to get to it. Like the first time they fought, and they go to the ground and they're fresh, Chandler's got very good defensive grappling. Oliveira could not, he wasn't even close to submitting him that first time, and they were completely dry. And then you look at like the grappling with Dustin Poirier in round 3, where it's like, his nose is busted, he's tired. Okay, I guess I'm done. Like I got nothing left. Like that's why I don't think you can rely on him unless he's just flat out KOing Charles Oliveira. So even though the price is pretty tempting. Like I'm not completely ruling out a Chandler bet, but I think if you are going to bet Chandler, I think you just bet him by KO 1, KO 2, something like that, because I really don't think that he can win a decision, to be honest. And I think Oliveira is just dangerous on the feet and on the mat to where he's probably going to end up getting the finish here. You mentioned the 2-year layoff. That's the last thing I'll say. Using the trends tool at fightnumbers.com, male fighters priced as an underdog coming off a 2-year layoff or longer are 3-18 over the last 3 years. So yeah, they really don't win pretty much ever. And it's like a negative 37% betting ROI if you bet on them over the last 3 years. So yeah, the trends certainly don't support Michael Chandler. I'm always going to root for him just because he puts on exciting fights, but so does Charles Oliveira, and I think this one delivers, and it's the one I'm looking most forward to on Saturday.
Yeah, this is an easy to like violence fight. The one thing I will say though in this fight though is I think to expect the unexpected. John, what I like to always kind of look at is rematches. No two fights are ever exactly alike. Even when you get rematches, like you'll get a fight where it's violence and it's over super early. The next fight they make adjustments, they come out and you get a decision. So there's always going to be adjustments. Things change, camps approach things differently. So I don't think this fight is going to play out identically to the way it happened before. So I would look more towards the submission for the outcome here in this fight against Charles Oliveira. If he takes his time a little bit more, if he follows kind of what Dustin did in the last fight, I could see him being slowing it down a little bit, taking it a little bit easy, and then being able to find his way to the ground and get into a dominant grappling position later on in the evening. I'm going to call for the sub. I'll say Charles Oliveira, round 3 submission, but I wouldn't be all that surprised by a round 1 KO from Michael Chandler just based on the way the guy fights. All right. And with that, you guys, it is main event time. Again, this is the home of fight, home of bets. Please subscribe if you guys have not. We're trying to get to 10K subs by the end of the year. Do me the favor. Go ahead and jump in, subscribe here to the channel. Make sure you are checking out the links in the description below. Promo code 11, again, for a free 7-day free trial of the premium home of bets. You guys check that out. The guys are up over 140 units, and I am joined by none other than John Kelly, the Don himself, talking UFC 309, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Oh my goodness. So John, here we are. I've got a bit of a hard time with this fight. I've made my opinions very, very clear on Jon Jones for a long time. That doesn't have anything to do with the fight, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that I'm just not a fan of him. I think he's a terrible human being. And what they're doing in this spot, allowing him to kind of take the easy path to GOAT status, dodging the absolute legitimate #1 contender, the interim belt holder of this weight class, to take on ancient 42-year-old Stipe Miocic, and then maybe even get another fight with a natural 170-pounder. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't like really what's going on. The glazing of Jon Jones is kind of rubbing me the wrong way. I know he's done some incredible things, and especially when he was in his prime, he really was the most incredible athlete we have ever seen. Regardless of what I think of him outside the cage, he is one of the most spectacular talents this sport has ever had. At 37 years old, he still came back and proved he's got it with a round 1 submission win over Cyril Gahn. I did think that Dominic Reyes beat him before he went on his sabbatical. I will say I scored that fight for the Dominator. So I've also been trying to take shots at fading Jon Jones on his way out. I felt like he was kind of slipping, and I think I took shots on both Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes before he hung it up back at 205. I have a hard time, man. I don't know what we're getting from Jon Jones. I mean, I know he's absolutely put together a dream team, right? Like, he's got elite wrestlers, he's got elite grapplers, he's got all kinds of people that piss hot, and he's put on 40 pounds of muscle to be able to move up to heavyweight and just be an absolute freak of nature up there. But that fight with Cyril Gahn really still didn't show us much. Like, yes, he is a meaty beast at this point. Took him down, climbed up on top of him, and got a submission. Gahn was never really in that fight. But Stipe has made a career off of toughness and durability, and he's a strong wrestler. He's a good boxer. The wars with Daniel Cormier, I actually thought DC was going to be the one to come out on top in those battles. So the fact that he pulled off the upset and won 2 out of 3, and in fact that final fight by decision over Daniel Cormier a couple years ago, that impressed the hell out of me because I was all team DC leading up to that fight. So I just don't want to sell Stipe short. But at 42 years old, I got to think we are absolutely not getting the best version of him. And he is coming off of a massive knockout loss to Francis Ngannou. That was the last time we saw him in the cage. And it has been 3 years since then. They've both been sidelined by pullouts and injuries leading up to this thing. this is absolutely a spot where the UFC is just trying to make Jon Jones a undeniable fixture. Dana White is absolutely obsessed with this man. Regardless of my personal feelings on the situation, that's the reality. And they want Jon Jones to just be the GOAT of all GOATs that ever goated. And I'm going to be the biggest Stipe Miocic fan on Saturday of all time. I'm going to be rooting for Stipe to upset the apple cart, ruin this homecoming, and take this all from them. I just don't think it's going to happen, man. Jon Jones is a beast, and I really feel like Stipe is going to have a hard time dealing with him. I just, again, have a hard time picturing what Jon Jones is these days because he's no longer the lithe, skinny, fast whippet that we saw at 205 pounds. He's big now. He's bulky. So I don't know if he's going to come out. Well, I mean, I know he's going to come out with a wrestling plan, obviously. Like I said, the wrestlers and grapplers he's got in his camp, you think he's going to look to take a guy like Stipe down. But does that translate? Does he have his speed? Is he going to be able to strike with this guy at all? I'm not entirely sure what it's going to look like. I think we may have a different version of Jon Jones than we've seen in the past that suits his new form, if you will. So I will say Jon Jones ends up getting the win, but I'm really confused as to how, because we haven't seen either of these guys at all and what they look like at this point. So he'll win. Is it going to be a sub? Is he going to ground and pound? I'm not so sure. I don't know. I really don't know how this fight goes, John. Can you help me out?
Yeah, I don't know how it goes. I think Jon Jones certainly wins. Like you mentioned, maybe it's a different version of him, and it probably is. But I also think it's potentially going to be a different version of Stipe. I mean, this dude is like very old at this point in terms of like he's not the elite fighter that he once was. He also has taken a ton of damage coming off a long layoff. Like I honestly think he might look just really bad. I think if like anything, not expecting him to look bad or at least to look worse than he did is really just a leap of faith and one that I'm not willing to take. Whereas Jon Jones, I think like he still has, even if he's less of a physical specimen than he once was, he still has a lot of strong skills that I think he can rely on to at least win rounds. You mentioned the wrestling, the leg kicks, like all of those things. I think he's going to have an advantage over the much slower Stipe Miocic. And so really the only angle that I like on this fight is the over 1.5 in the -150 range. I feel like, maybe this price tag, people are expecting Jon Jones KO1, KO2. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, is it going to be that easy for him? Like, even if Miocic is like regressed, which I am expecting, like, does that mean Jon Jones is just going to head kick KO him like instantly? I don't know. I'm less convinced of that. So it's one that I think Jon Jones does eventually get the finish, but I don't know if it's coming right away. And I would expect it not to come right away unless Stipe is just like totally decrepit. So we'll see. I'm definitely I don't usually rely on like weigh-ins and how fighters are looking throughout the week and stuff like that. But this is one where I do think it is going to be, a data point really on both sides for this one. But give me Jon Jones, hot take, ends up winning again. And you mentioned the thing about Dana, how he's obsessed with him. And I'm sure you guys have seen it, but the memes that, or the videos that people are doing where it's like, it'll be a random thing. And then it's Dana White saying, if you go in a room with Jon Jones, you're not coming out.
I love it.
And they had one like recently when Dana was at the presidential thing and they put that over his voice, like the Jon Jones clip. I was dying laughing. So definitely go look that up after the show tonight. Those memes are absolutely hilarious.
No, they're gold. They're solid gold. I love, and frankly, I gotta give Dana White credit. I gotta tell you guys, the fact that he embraced, like he saw what everybody was talking shit about him, and he made sure to drive home like Jon Jones is the pound for pound GOAT. Like he started doing it like on purpose after people were mocking him for not shutting up about it. I'm all for it. Okay. Like it was obnoxious. It was annoying. I was so done with it. But once you're like turning it on people and doing it, knowing exactly what you're doing, it's like, all right, now you get credit for pushing it to the point of ridiculousness. So good job, Dana. Good work on that one. But yeah, man, I'm so ready to be done with the Jon Jones saga. I don't want him to fight Alex Pereira. I don't want to watch him do anything except fight Tom Aspinall. It's the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and back in the day, this place used to be where the best fighters on planet Earth came to figure out who was the best fighter on planet Earth. And if you're giving a retiring legend, the victory lap, if you're giving them a couple of fights to wind down their career, I totally get that. I completely understand that. But if you've got a guy like Jon, who technically just dethroned the heavyweight champion, who is the actual belt holder in this weight class, to then softball him and drag him along for a year and a half for a fight nobody wants to watch. The co-main event is the main event, Jon. The co-main event of UFC 309 is the fight we're all tuning in for. Nobody gives a shit about this. Like, even the mouth breathers who are all team Jon Jones and want to look past all the terrible things that he's done in life and still somehow, some way, some reason look up to the guy, they know he's going to run through ancient Stipe. This fight doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything. And if Jon sticks around, I want to watch him fight Tom. If he's not going to fight Tom, then bro, get him out of here. You say you've got millions and you're happy with your achievements in life. Great. Go away. Be done. I'm over it. So yeah, man, I'm ready for this main event to be over. It's probably Jon. I guess I'll say TKO, ground and pound. He's Sub-Zero gone. I'll predict that he gets on top of Stipe and pounds the old man out. And unfortunately, Stipe will, get wheeled out of the octagon in a wheelchair when it's all said and done. But that's it, guys. That's UFC 309. Thank you for sticking with us and doing these breakdowns. Jon, thank you for the time. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for sharing everything with us here for this show. If you want to shout anything out, if you've got stuff coming up, stuff to plug, the floor is yours, my friend. Have at it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on, Clint. Always a pleasure, and really appreciate you throwing on the tinfoil hat every time
Anytime.
I teed it up. So yeah, always a good time. You guys can follow me on Twitter at John Kelly DFS. Same thing on YouTube, and check out fightnumbers.com.
Absolutely. Check out fightnumbers.com, but make sure you use my link for it so I get credit for it. Thank you very much. And also, I see a couple of people in the chat know what's up. Francis Ngannou is still the king. Absolutely. 1000%. If there's ever going to be a super fight of any kind, give me Francis versus Jones before they both hang it up. That I'll watch. I want to see Frankie Murder go out and claim that rightful UFC GOAT title for himself. I know they'll never let it happen. They're trying to erase him from the record books, but Frankie Murder knocks out Jon Jones.
Everyone has a price. Never say never.
I want to see it so bad. Give me that one. All right, guys. Thank you for watching the show. It is pay-per-view week, so we will have the Sharp Action Report on Friday, as well as usual Total Takedown and Undefeated Post Weigh-In show coming to you this week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the support. It's going to be a long week for your boys. So good vibes, thoughts, and prayers. Send them my way. I'm going to need some help. I'm not getting any sleep this week. So help me out. But love you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Hope you win some cash. Let's roll.